The Soft History of Ancient Rome, a gentle journey through time for seniors and restful minds. Before we begin, take a moment to settle in. Let the day drift behind you like a quiet river. This isn't a lesson, it isn't a lecture. It's a bedtime journey, a soft-spoken walk through time. You won't need to remember dates or names. You won't be tested, and there is nothing you need to do but listen and breathe. This is a different kind of history, not the kind written in stone, but the kind passed down in whispers between elders and grandchildren, between the stars and the silence. This is the story of ancient Rome, not told with swords or shouting, but with sandals on warm roads, fountains in sleepy courtyards, and the hush of olive trees in the wind. So close your eyes. Let your breath match the rhythm of ancient footsteps, and let Rome come back to life, not loudly, but gently. Long before Rome was made of marble, it was made of myth, and long before it ruled the world, it was rocked to sleep by a river. Picture a quiet morning, soft fog on the Tiber, birds still asleep in the trees, and a single basket floating gently between the reeds. Inside it, two newborn twins, their cries barely louder than the breeze. No armies, no emperors, just a she-wolf, watching. She does not pounce, she shelters. She wraps her body around the children, licks their cheeks clean, and listens to their breathing. This is not the beginning of an empire, it is the beginning of a lullaby, because Rome, before it was mighty, was tender. And that is the story we'll tell tonight. The River and the Wolf. Breathe in, slowly, breathe out, gently. There is no hurry here, no need to sit up straight or focus. Let your body ease into comfort as we return to the very beginning of Rome, not with battle, but with a basket and a breath. A land before time. Long ago, before people called it Rome, the land was wild. There were no marble statues, no armies, no roads, just hills and wind, and the slow, patient song of the Tiber River. The river flowed quietly, like it had nowhere to be. It curled through grassy meadows and whispered secrets to the trees. Birds sang, foxes trotted through the brush. And sometimes, just sometimes, the wind would pause long enough for you to hear your own heartbeat. That's the kind of place it was. Still, software sacred, and in that sacred stillness, one day, a basket appeared, the basket on the river. It floated gently, bumping softly against the reeds, woven by worried hands, laid upon the water with hope and sorrow. Inside that basket were two sleeping twins, tiny, wrapped in cloth, barely more than breath. They didn't know they were in danger. They didn't know that they had been left to fate. They didn't know that kings feared them or that gods were watching. They only knew warmth and the lull of water beneath them. Romulus and Remus, that was their names, not yet spoken aloud, but already written softly in time. The she-wolf appears. Somewhere on the riverbank, beneath a fig tree, a wolf was watching. Not the kind that hunts, not the kind that growls. This one had just given birth herself, her body still warm, her instincts still full. She heard the faint sound, soft, like wind through grass, the cry of a child. At first, she tilted her head, listened. Then, with quiet pause, she stepped toward the sound. There, resting in a basket, were the two boys. She could have walked away, but she didn't. Instead, she laid down beside them, curled her body close, and let them rest against her side as if they were her own. Her breath was steady, her eyes were calm, and beneath the fig tree 3 heartbeats settled into rhythm, raised by nature. The she-wolf fed them, licked them clean, kept them warm on cold nights, guarded them from other beasts, taught them, in her own way, the rules of the forest. For days, weeks, this quiet family survived together. No walls, no words, only care. And the Tiber River watched it all, silent, steady, soft. The shepherd comes. One morning, as the fog lifted slowly from the earth, a man named Faustulus was walking nearby. He was a shepherd, simple, gentle, a man who spoke more to animals than to people. He saw the wolf, he saw the boys, and something inside him whispered, "They are not meant for the forest alone." So he waited until the wolf slipped away into the trees. Then he knelt by the twins, lifted them gently from the basket, and carried them home. A new beginning. Faustulus and his wife raised the boys with warmth and wonder. They had little, but they gave much. Romulus and Remus grew strong. They learned to herd sheep, to read the sky, to listen to the wind. But something always pulled at them. A feeling, like a river they had once floated upon, was calling them to more. The hill of dreams. When the boys became men, they stood together on a hill. The land below stretched wide, open, waiting, alive. They looked at each other, at the stones, the soil, the sky, and they knew they would build something here, something lasting, something sacred, a city. The brothers disagree. But even love can disagree. Romulus saw signs in one place, Remus in another. They argued, not with hatred, but with passion. Each wanted the city, each wanted the name. And then, as softly as the river once moved, tragedy flowed in. Romulus struck his brother, and Remus fell. The city is born, Romulus mourned. He wept not as a king, but as a brother. And then he built. He laid the first stone. He called the place Rome, not in triumph, but in tribute, to Remus, to the she-wolf, to the river, to the quiet beginning that would one day echo through centuries. The city sleeps, and as Rome took shape, with huts and hearths, with songs and footsteps, with laughter and loss, the Tiber River kept flowing. It whispered to the roots. It hummed beneath bridges. It remembered the basket, the wolf, the boys, and it carried their story onward, softly, always softly. You may rest now. We are only at the beginning. Let the story pause inside you like a breath held gently. The next chapter will come soon, calm, warm, and waiting. The first kings and sacred fire, the time before laws, when Rome still dreamed like a village, before there were senators, before Rome spoke in marble and marched with legions. There were kings who ruled not with iron, but with rhythm, with the quiet trust of people gathered near a flame. A city begins to wake. Rome was born, not fully grown, but as a whisper. A few huts, a wall of stones no taller than a man, a clearing where people gathered to warm themselves, to trade words and bread. This was a city just beginning to dream of itself. It didn't yet know its size. It didn't yet plan for empire. It listened to footsteps. It lit torches. It waited for a leader. And for a time, that leader was Romulus. Romulus the First. He was not yet legend. He was still just a man who had lost his brother. He guided the people. He divided them into tribes, chose elders to help advise, and gave shape to what had been only instinct. Romulus ruled with vision, but in time he vanished. Some say he was taken by the gods. Some say he became the god Quirinus himself, but no one knows for sure. And so the city looked again for a guide. Numa Pompilius, the peaceful king. After Romulus, the people turned not to a warrior, but to a thinker. His name was Numa Pompilius. He was gentle. He was wise. He believed Rome needed more than walls. It needed meaning. He built no armies. He won no wars. Instead, he gave the city its soul, the sacred flame. Numa created rituals, simple movements to mark the days and honor the unseen. He built the Temple of Janus, dedicated to the god of beginnings and transitions. Its doors remained open during war, closed in peace. Under Numa, those doors remained shut. He also introduced the Vestal Virgins, priestesses sworn to keep Rome's sacred fire burning. That flame represented the city's life. As long as it flickered, Rome would endure, and it did, for over 1,000 years. The spirits of home. But Numa's Rome wasn't just about grand temples. It was also about the spirit of home. He taught the people to honor the Lares and Penates, tiny household gods who lived in doorways, watched over meals, and warmed families. Before every meal, a few drops of wine, a piece of bread, a soft word. In every home, a little altar, a little light. Rome wasn't yet strong, but it was now sacred. Kings who built after Numa, other kings followed. Some were dreamers, some were builders. Tullus Hostilius, a man of action, brought back battle, expanded the city's land. Ancus Marcius, a practical soul, built bridges across the Tiber and founded Ostia, Rome's first port. He gave Rome its voice by the sea, stones and sewers. Then came Tarquinius Priscus, an Etruscan, foreign-born but deeply Roman in spirit. He brought craftsmen, he brought order. He began the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's great sewer. It may sound unglamorous, but clean streets, flowing water, these were the quiet foundations of greatness. Rome was still small, but it was beginning to think big. Servius Tullius, born of fire. Next came Servius Tullius, a king said to be born of flame. As a boy, a fire glowed above his head while he slept, but he did not burn. The people believed he was blessed. He divided Rome's people by wealth, organizing them into ranks. He created the first census. He built the Servian Wall, a hug of stone around the city. But more than that, he made Rome feel like a real place, with structure, with rules, with identity. The last king, Tarquinius Superbus, and then came the final king, Tarquinius Superbus, Tarquinius the Proud. He was powerful, he was feared, but he ruled with cruelty. He silenced voices, ignored tradition, and treated Rome like a crown, not a community. And one day, the people said, enough. The quiet revolt. The story goes, after a terrible crime by the king's son, Rome's people, led by Brutus, rose not with fire, but with clarity. They would no longer have kings. They wanted a city where no one ruled alone. And so, they did the unthinkable. They created a republic, a city governed not by bloodlines, but by votes, by laws, by balance. The sacred flame remained. Even as kings vanished, the sacred fire still burned. The Vestals still kept watch. The temples still stood. The Lares still guarded homes. Because Rome was more than its rulers. It was its rhythm, its rituals, its people, and its quiet decision to govern themselves. Close your eyes now. You've walked with kings, some kind, some cruel. You've felt the first sacred warmth of a city growing into itself. And soon you'll walk the white stone roads of the Republic. The Republic awakens the time when Rome learned to listen to itself. A new morning, the kings were gone. No crowns, no thrones, no single voice above the rest. And as the early fog lifted over the 7 hills, Rome breathed in the quiet of a new idea. What if we rule together? What is a republic? Rome didn't invent the idea of a republic, but it gave the word a home, a Latin name, res publica, the public thing. a system where no one held power forever, where decisions were shared, and where the city itself became sacred. No kings, only citizens, and 2 leaders at a time, called consuls, elected to serve 1 year, always with the power to stop each other. It was a system of caution, of humility, of shared breath. The Senate still whispered. The Senate remained. But now it advised, not ruled. Older men in white togas gathered beneath columns and spoke in soft tones about laws, land, and loyalty. Their words moved slowly, like sunlight across a floor. And yet, they carried weight. They remembered the kings, and they chose not to repeat their mistakes. The people speak, but it wasn't just the rich who had a voice. Over time, the common folk, plebeians, began to rise. They tilled the land, they served in the army, they fed the city, and they wanted to be heard. They didn't shout, they didn't riot, they simply left. The first walkout. It was called the Secessio Plebis, the secession of the plebs. They marched out of the city, set up camp on a hill, and waited. No harvests, no work, no soldiers, just silence. And in that silence, Rome listened. The tribune is born to restore balance. Rome created a new role, the tribune of the people, a sacred protector, chosen by the plebeians, untouchable, with the power to say just one word, veto. It meant, I forbid, a whisper strong enough to stop laws in their tracks. With this, Rome had something rare, a voice for the small, a shield against the large. Balance, not perfect, but possible. The 12 tables. Still, the people wanted clarity, laws written and shared by all. So Rome etched them into bronze, the 12 tables, simple rules about debts, about property, about justice, displayed in the forum where every citizen could read them or listen as they were read aloud. The law was no longer hidden in palaces. It stood beneath the sky, beside market stalls and fountains. It belonged to everyone. Daily life in the Republic. In this young republic, Rome became a rhythm. Mornings in the forum, where bakers, barbers, and philosophers mingled. Afternoons in the curia, where senators debated beneath echoing arches. Evenings in homes, with soft lamplight, olive oil meals, and children listening to stories of gods and ancestors. Rome became not just a city, but a heartbeat. Conflict still lingered. Peace did not last forever. Sometimes old families tried to take too much. Sometimes tribunes demanded too loudly. There were tensions, reforms, delays, but always a return to balance. Because Rome now had memory, a memory of kings, and a promise never to repeat them. The quiet strength of structure. There were other officials too, praetors for justice, censors for counting, aediles for markets and games. Everyone had a role, and no one held it for long. Power was passed like a torch, never burned too long in one hand. Rome, in this time, did not conquer the world. It conquered itself. The city sleeps and prepares. And each night, as oil lamps dimmed and sandals stopped clacking on stone, Rome returned to stillness. The forum emptied, the scrolls were tied shut, the stars watched, and beneath it all, a city whispered, "We are not ruled, we are shared. Rest now. In the next chapter, the world will grow louder, generals will rise, marches will begin, names like Caesar will stir the dust. But for now, stay in the quiet balance of the early republic. Stay in the gentle echo of shared power." Julius Caesar and the Fall of the Republic, a soft telling of a name that changed everything. A republic too big for itself. Rome had grown from a village on 7 hills to a vast network of cities, provinces, and promises. There were governors now, colonies, conquered lands that spoke Latin in the markets and prayed to Jupiter by new rivers. The Republic, beautiful in design, was being stretched. The Senate still met. The laws still stood. But beneath the marble, the balance was slipping. A young man named Gaius Julius Caesar. He wasn't a king, he wasn't a warrior, not yet. He was a boy, born into an old but not powerful family, thin, studious, often sick, but clever. He watched, he listened, and when he spoke, people leaned in. His name was Gaius Julius Caesar, and history would one day lean in forever. The early Caesar, young Caesar, believed in words. He studied oratory. He quoted philosophers. He wept at plays. He married carefully, made friends wisely, and rose steadily. He charmed Rome not with force, but with feeling. The people loved him, not for his money, but for how he made them feel seen. The first triumvirate, Caesar knew power could not be won alone, so he formed a quiet alliance, not with scholars, but with giants. Crassus, the richest man in Rome, Pompey, the most celebrated general. Together, they formed the first triumvirate, a triangle of strength, ambition, and careful smiles. It wasn't official, it wasn't written, but it ruled. And Caesar began his greatest chapter. Conquest of Gaul. The Senate sent Caesar to Gaul, the lands of France and Belgium today. There he led Rome's legions through mountains and rivers against fierce tribes. He wrote as he went, his commentaries, clear, simple, elegant. People in Rome read them like poetry. They saw his victories, felt his bravery, shared his glory. For 9 years he fought and won. But in his absence the triangle cracked. Crassus died. Pompey stayed in Rome. The Senate grew wary, and Caesar was too popular. Crossing the Rubicon, the Senate sent a message. Return home. Leave your army behind. But Caesar paused. He stood at the Rubicon River, the border of legal command. To cross it with soldiers was rebellion. He waited, breathed, and then said simply, Alea iacta est. The die is cast. He crossed, and the Republic gasped. Civil war begins. Rome split. Pompey fled. Caesar followed. There were battles in Greece, sieges in Egypt, politics in the East, and through it all, Caesar did not fall. In Egypt he met Cleopatra, the queen of light and strategy. Their story would become legend. But Caesar's heart remained in Rome, and he returned, not as general, but as ruler, dictator for life. He was named dictator, not for 6 months, but for life. He wore no crown, but he ruled. He passed reforms, gave land to the poor, built libraries, forgave enemies. But some feared he had become too much, not just a man, not just a leader, but a king in disguise. The Ides of March, a group of senators, men Caesar had once called friends, met secretly. They believed they were saving the Republic, and on March 15th in the Senate Hall, they struck. The blades were not sharp, but they were many, and Caesar fell. His last words, soft, stunned, were said to Brutus, a man he trusted like a son. Et tu, Brute? Even you? Rome burns. Quietly, the people mourned. The fire on the streets was not of buildings, but of belief. The Republic had not been saved. It had been wounded. Caesar was gone. But something bigger had been born. The shadow of empire. In the crowd, a young man stood watching. His name was Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, and in time he would become Augustus, the first emperor. But that is another chapter. Let your thoughts rest now. Caesar's name no longer echoes in shouting halls, but in quiet dreams, in coins, in calendars, and in the story of how power slowly reshaped a city. Augustus and the Empire begins When power was carried like a whisper, not a shout, a quiet air, Caesar was gone. Rome was full of smoke, sorrow, and whispers, and in the shadow of grief a young man stepped forward, barely 20, thin, careful. He didn't speak loudly, he didn't wear armor, but he held something rare, Caesar's name, not as a friend, not as a general, but as a son. His name was Gaius Octavius, but soon Rome would call him Augustus, the road to power. Octavian didn't claim revenge. He didn't raise a sword. Instead, he raised trust. He formed an alliance with two others, Mark Antony, Caesar's former general Lepidus, a political elder. Together they made the second triumvirate. Together they avenged Caesar's murder. Together they ended the lives of Brutus and Cassius, the men who held the knives. Rome watched. Rome waited. And the Republic slipped further into memory. The triangle breaks, as all powerful groups do. The triumvirate crumbled. Lepidus faded. Mark Antony drifted to the east, to Cleopatra. There, among the palaces of Alexandria, he built a life that felt more like a dream than a duty. He crowned his children kings. He promised Rome's wealth to Egypt, and Rome grew restless. East versus West. Octavian watched. He didn't accuse. He didn't rage. He showed the people letters. He read aloud what Antony had promised to foreign queens. He asked one question, "Where does Antony's loyalty lie?" And the people answered, not with swords, but with silence. They turned. The Battle of Actium. In 31 BCE, the two men met at sea, Octavian's navy versus Antony and Cleopatra's ships. The Battle of Actium was not long. It was not grand, but it was final. Antony fell. Cleopatra followed, and Octavian remained. The empire begins. Octavian returned to Rome not as conqueror, but as calm. He didn't call himself king or emperor. He took the name Augustus, meaning the revered one. He called himself princeps, first citizen, and the people believed him because he ruled differently, quietly, firmly, elegantly. He wore no crown, but he rebuilt temples, he restored faith, he cleaned streets, he balanced laws. Rome became a garden again, a place where children laughed and fountains ran clear. Pax Romana under Augustus, Rome entered the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For 200 years there were no great civil wars. Trade flourished. Roads stretched across continents. People of many tongues and skin tones called themselves Roman, not by blood, but by belonging. Augustus the builder. He famously said, "I found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble." He built libraries, forums, aqueducts. He restored old laws and created new hope. He gave more than orders. He gave identity. The first emperor Sleeps Augustus ruled for decades, and when he died, peacefully, surrounded by family and friends, Rome did not collapse. It bowed its head, lit torches, and whispered his name in gratitude. The Republic was gone, but something else had risen. Not tyranny, not chaos, but order. And it had a quiet name, Augustus. Rest now. We are in the time of peace. The marble glows under the moonlight, the fountains sing, and the city, reborn, sleeps calmly beneath the stars. Roads, aqueducts, and Rome's soft engine, how Rome moved without making a sound. The first roads were paths before engineers, before armies. There were feet, shepherds, farmers, merchants on slow-moving carts. They followed the hills, the rivers, the stars, and those footsteps became paths. Paths became tracks. Tracks became roads. Rome noticed, Rome listened, and then Rome built the Via Appia, the most famous of them all, the Via Appia. They called it the Queen of Roads. It stretched southward, flat, straight, patient, built not with chaos but with layers, heavy stone at the base, crushed gravel, smooth basalt slabs on top. A Roman road wasn't just for walking, it was a promise. You can get there, and you can get back. Roads that connected a world. In time, these roads went farther, across mountains, over rivers, through forests and deserts. They led to towns, ports, and faraway provinces. To some, they brought soldiers. To others, peace. To all, they brought Rome. Even now you can find them. Stones still resting, still waiting, still whispering, "We carried everything." The aqueducts, rivers in the sky. But Rome didn't just build roads for travel. It also built roads for water. Aqueducts, stone bridges that carried streams through the air. They brought fresh water from far-off springs and hills right into the city. No engines, no pumps, just slope, gravity, and brilliance. Building the flow. An aqueduct looked simple, arches holding a channel, but beneath the surface, math lived. The slope had to be perfect, not too steep, not too flat. Too much speed, the stone cracked. Too slow, the water spoiled. Rome solved it. Stone by stone, inch by inch, they guided water gently over land, the baths and fountains. And where did that water go? Into public fountains, where neighbors filled clay jugs. Into bathhouses, where warmth and wellness met. Into homes, where the wealthy had running water centuries before others. Clean water, cool rooms, flowing life. Rome was alive because its water moved, not in floods, but in rhythm, the cloaca maxima. And just as water came in, waste had to go out. The cloaca maxima, Rome's great drain, a sewer built before most nations existed. It carried away what the city no longer needed, silently, faithfully. It still flows beneath Rome today. Concrete, arches, and the genius of simplicity. Rome didn't invent everything, but it made everything work. Its concrete, made with volcanic ash, lasted longer than ours. Its arches, strong, balanced curves, held temples, bridges, and dreams. Its roads and aqueducts were not loud achievements. They were quiet revolutions. No speeches, no battles, just movement, just flow. Rome moves, even at night. At midnight, when the city sleeps, its soft engine still runs. Water flows, streets rest. The stones hold the memory of carts, sandals, and sun. And Rome keeps breathing. You may rest now, too. Let your thoughts drift down an ancient road. Let clear water pass gently through your imagination. And know this, every great thing begins with simple movement. Let's continue, softly now, into the twilight of an empire, not with a crash, but with a dimming, not with war drums, but with the slow fading of certainty, the gentle decline, a slow dimming of glory, how an empire grows tired without falling all at once. Too big to hold in one hand, Rome had become the world. Its roads reached the edges of deserts, its laws echoed in foreign tongues, its coins crossed seas. But as the map stretched, the core began to crack. One city could not hold it all. One senate could not understand every need. One emperor could not calm every border. Small cracks in marble walls. It didn't begin with war. It began with weight. Too many generals wanted power. Too many provinces needed attention. Too much gold went to keeping the edges from breaking off. And at the center, Rome sagged under the burden of its own greatness. The crisis of the 3rd century. Between emperors came uncertainty. In 100 years, dozens of men wore the purple robes. Many were soldiers, chosen by their legions, not by the people. They came quickly, and many fell just as quickly. No one ruled long enough to mend the cracks. They only patched the walls with their own names. Diocletian's fix. Then came a man of order, Diocletian. He looked at the chaos and made a hard choice. Let us divide the burden. And so Rome was split into east and west. Each half had its own emperor, its own court, its own rhythm. And for a while the breathing was easier. But it was not unity. It was survival. The new capital, Constantinople. Soon after, a new leader rose, Constantine. He did something no Roman had done before. He moved the capital. Far to the east, on the Bosporus, he founded Constantinople, a new Rome. Stronger walls, safer borders, closer to the empire's wealth, and the old city, Rome herself, began to feel forgotten. Still beautiful, still sacred, but no longer the center. Pressure from the outside. Beyond Rome's borders, nations stirred. Visigoths, Vandals, Franks, Huns. Some came in peace, some came in waves. Many came because they had nowhere else to go. And Rome, once strong, began to bargain, to pay, to surrender land in exchange for quiet. But the quiet didn't last. The sack of Rome, 410 CE. For the first time in 800 years, an enemy entered the eternal city. The Visigoths, led by Alaric, marched through the gates. They did not destroy everything. They did not burn it to ash. But the illusion of safety was gone. The world saw that even Rome could be touched. The last Western emperor. In 476 CE, the Western Empire breathed its last breath. A boy emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was removed by a Germanic general. No blood, no final battle, just a letter sent, a throne abandoned, a title returned. And with that, the Western Roman Empire faded, not into ruin, but into history. The East remains, but Rome did not die. In the East, Constantinople lived on as the Byzantine Empire. It would survive for another 1,000 years, Roman in name, Greek in tongue, Christian in faith. The heart beat differently, but it beat. The legacy, not the loss. What remained in the West was not rubble. It was memory, laws that shaped nations, roads that still carried carts, language that would bloom into Italian, French, Spanish. Rome did not vanish. It became part of the soil, part of the sky, part of us. Let your thoughts rest now. Rome did not fall, it transformed, and as the marble faded, the story grew. Soon we will end not with loss, but with legacy. Then let us close the journey, not with an ending, but with an echo. A soft voice from the past, still speaking gently in the corners of today. The eternal memory, Rome's whisper in our world, the empire that never truly slept. Some things don't disappear. Rome is not on fire, Rome is not gone, Rome is not buried beneath dust. It lives, not in soldiers or walls, but in us. In the way we govern, in the words we use, in the quiet corners of cities we never question. We still speak its language. Even if you've never studied Latin, you speak it. Every time you say justice, or victory, or aqua, or animal, or senior, or memory, you're speaking pieces of Rome, the days of the week, the names of the months, the way we tell time, all shaped by a city that still whispers through calendars. We still use its laws, our courts, our contracts, all rest gently on the bones of Roman thinking, in how we vote, in how we protect the innocent, in how we write rights and rules. Rome wrote the idea. Everyone is equal before the law. It was not always practiced, but it was planted, and it grew. We still walk its roads. Many of Rome's roads still exist. Walk long enough in parts of Europe and your feet will follow their stones. But even if the stone is gone, the idea is not. To connect, to pave, to make travel free, safe, and shared. That was Rome's gift. We still build like they did. The arch, the dome, the straight street. Walk into a museum, a cathedral, a government building. Look up. Rome is there, in the curve, the symmetry, the intention. Not loud, but present. We still remember its names: Augustus, Julius, Caesar, Cicero, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius. These are not just people. They are pillars, echoes of thought, of poetry, of choice. Their ideas drift into speeches, into bedtime stories, into philosophy, into you. The spirit of citizenship. Rome's greatest gift was not conquest. It was the idea that a person could belong not by birth, but by belief. That you could become Roman by living Roman, by sharing its roads, its laws, its language. The first great city of citizens, not subjects, and we still believe in that. A city of flame, not ash. Rome is often remembered for its fall, but that is not where it ends, because even now, beneath the layers of new buildings, beneath centuries of change, Rome still breathes, in the rhythm of justice, in the song of roads, in the balance of stone and sky. Let Rome rest in you. You have walked with shepherd kings, with builders, with thinkers. You've followed the soft roads of Caesar, the quiet rise of Augustus, the daily life of families long gone but not forgotten. And now, as you rest, you are part of this story too. Close your eyes. Let the aqueducts flow beneath your breath. Let the forum echo in your chest. Let the marble cool your thoughts. You are not far from Rome. Rome walks with you, in silence, in memory, in dreams. The soft history of ancient Egypt. A gentle walk along the Nile for restful minds, where time sleeps beside the river. Before we begin, take a slow breath. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your thoughts drift like a boat on calm waters. You don't have to remember anything tonight. You don't need to understand the pyramids or count the dynasties. This story isn't about knowing, it's about feeling. We will not rush through history. We will float through it, slowly, softly, like a reed boat drifting downstream. You'll hear the voices of ancient builders, feel the hush of desert winds, and smell the sweetness of date palms ripening in the heat. This is not the Egypt of noise and conquest. This is the Egypt that rests, beneath stars, beside the Nile, wrapped in linen, remembered in golden silence. So rest your eyes, breathe in warm dust and sacred stillness, and let the past come to you. The river that remembers everything, long before clocks, before borders, before names etched in stone, there was the Nile. It didn't ask for anything. It simply moved, forward in the day, backward in time. And on its green edges people gathered. They built homes from mud. They whispered prayers into the breeze. They watched ibis birds step gently through the marsh. And the Nile watched them in return. It watched a child place a candle in the water. It watched a farmer bury seeds in dark, wet earth. It watched a girl tie papyrus scrolls into bundles and hide them from the wind. And as centuries passed, the river never stopped watching. It remembers the first pyramid, the first boat, the first lullaby sung beneath a date tree. And tonight, as you rest, the Nile will remember you too. Not as a conqueror, not as a pharaoh, but as a soul at peace, drifting slowly through the soft history of ancient Egypt. Perfect. Let us now begin softly, with the river that watched everything and never hurried. The river that watches time, a gentle beginning beside the Nile. The first breath of morning before the pyramids, before the pharaohs, before names like Ramses or Cleopatra meant anything to anyone. There was water. The Nile River didn't roar, it whispered, and its whispers became the breath of a civilization. Each morning, the river welcomed the sun, a golden disk rising quietly over the desert's edge. Palm trees swayed in the still air. Lotus flowers opened slowly, like eyelids waking from a dream. Birds called softly, their voices never rushing. Time didn't tick in Egypt. It flowed like the Nile. Life along the river. The first people didn't build temples. They built trust. They placed their huts near the water's edge, but not too close. They learned the river's rhythm, its moods, its music. Every year the Nile would flood, not wildly, but predictably. It rose, it spread, it gifted the land with black silt, a rich, dark soil that made things grow. From this soil came wheat and barley and hope. People planted with quiet joy. They harvested with gratitude, and always they watched the river. They saw it not as a threat, but as a parent, sometimes strict, always giving. The first elders and their thoughts. Before writing, there was memory. Before temples, there were stories told in the shade. Elders spoke of the river's moods, of fish that jumped only when the stars were right, of crocodiles that could read human hearts, of reeds that whispered secrets when the wind was just right. Children listened with wide eyes, not because they were afraid, but because every tale felt true, wrapped in river mist and soft laughter. They didn't need scrolls. They had the Nile, the plants that watched. Too along the riverbanks grew plants that would shape history. Papyrus, tall, thin, flexible. It would become scrolls, boats, sandals, even brushes. Lotus flowers, symbols of rebirth. They closed at night and opened at dawn, just like the sky. Date palms, their fruit was sweet, their shade a gift, their presence a promise of peace. Each plant lived slowly, and that slowness shaped the people who lived beside them. They learned to wait, to watch, to wonder. A day in the early village. The homes were made of mud brick, stacked gently, lined with straw. Inside, a fire crackled. Flatbread sizzled on hot stones. Children played with little carved animals, their eyes bright but their voices low. There was no need to hurry. Every task, grinding grain, weaving cloth, patching walls, was done with care. Not because they had no tools, but because they had time. Nights beside the river. At night, the stars came alive. Not one or two, but thousands. The Milky Way shimmered like a path across the sky, and the people believed it was the celestial Nile, a river in the heavens mirroring the one below. They lay on woven mats. They listened to crickets. They watched the moon glide across the water like a soft silver bark. And they dreamed, not of war, but of peace. A sacred relationship. The Nile wasn't just water. It was memory. It was teacher. It was mirror. And the people of early Egypt, before they built great monuments, before they painted gods with gold leaf, they simply watched. And the river watched back. So now, as you rest, let the Nile flow through your thoughts. Let its water cool your mind. Let its rhythm rock you gently to sleep. In the next chapter, stone will rise, gods will be named, and the first great temples will cast long shadows beside the sand. Where the sun was more than light, and sand held more than silence. The birth of belief, gods from the sun and sand, a gentle unfolding of Egyptian faith. Sunrise before names had faces. Long ago, when the sky was still young, the people of the Nile looked upward and wondered, why does the sun rise without fail? Why does the river return each year? Why does life come from such dry, quiet sand? They did not answer with fear. They answered with story. They saw faces in the sun. They saw meaning in the wind. And slowly, the gods were born. Ra, the sun that watches. The first and oldest light was Ra. He did not scream or thunder. He rose each morning in a glowing boat, sailing across the sky. By day, he watched with calm warmth. By night, he sailed through the underworld, battling darkness, bringing morning once again. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't playful. He was steady. And in Egypt, that was the greatest gift. Bastet, the gentle protector. In the warm corners of homes, soft paws patted across cool floors. The Egyptians watched cats move, graceful, alert, quiet, and they saw in them something divine. Bastet, the cat goddess, was both protector and peacekeeper. She guarded children, brought joy, and reminded people to walk softly, even through busy days. Small statues of her sat on windowsills, their eyes watching, but never judging. Amun, the hidden one. Not all gods had form. Some, like Amun, were felt more than seen. They were the breeze that cooled the skin, the silence before rain, the strength inside the breath. Amun became a god of kings, but never lost his mystery. Even his name meant the hidden one, and many found comfort in that, knowing that not all power had to show itself. Osiris, lord of the green and the gone, they noticed something strange in their fields. Every year, seeds vanished into the dark earth, and then, quietly, they returned, green, tall, alive. So they told the story of Osiris, a gentle god who died and returned, who ruled the afterlife and gave hope that endings were not always final. He wore white linen, held a crook and flail, and waited in the west, where the sun disappeared. Ma'at, the feather of balance. They didn't believe in chaos, they believed in balance, and that balance had a name, Ma'at. She wasn't loud, she didn't fight, she simply held a feather and asked the heart of every person in every life to be just as light. Live fairly, speak truly, walk gently. That was enough. Temples, homes for the divine. The people did not shout their beliefs, they built them. Temples rose beside the Nile, not as fortresses, but as invitations, shaded halls, lotus columns, soft pools, and still altars. Priests moved barefoot, tending fires, pouring oils, combing the air with songs. Not every Egyptian entered a temple, but all respected them, for inside the gods slept, and the people kept watch. Amulets and little things, not all worship was grand. In homes, people wore amulets shaped like the Ankh, a cross of life, the eye of Horus for safety, the scarab, a beetle of rebirth. These were not magic tricks, they were memories, tiny whispers of faith tied around the wrist, hidden in cloth, left with the dead. Gods in dreams. At night, people believed the gods could visit in dreams. A mother might hear Hathor's laughter. A farmer might feel Thoth's wisdom in a vision of stars. A traveler might see Anubis walking beside him in a field of reeds. And when they woke, they didn't rush to explain. They simply offered thanks, in words, in fruit, in song. Belief without fear. Egyptian gods were not terrifying. They were not perfect. They didn't demand. They reminded. To walk in harmony, to speak with care, to honor the river, the earth, and each other. And in return, they gave Egypt a peace that lasted thousands of years. So now, as you rest, imagine a quiet temple by moonlight. A priest gently lights a lamp. A statue of Bastet watches from the shadows, and the gods smile softly, silently, just like always. Now we step into a world of stillness and stone, not to chase glory, but to understand patience. Let's begin. Pyramids of patience, stone, sand, and stars, a gentle journey through the most enduring monuments of Earth. The desert does not rush. In Egypt, sand is not just sand, it is memory. It holds footprints for centuries. It embraces stone. It softens the sound of time. And long ago, on this golden sea, people began to build, not because they wanted to touch the sky, but because they wanted to be remembered, softly, forever. A dream born in silence. No one shouted, "We will build a pyramid." The idea was quieter, more sacred. It came from the stars, from the sun, from the deep hope that death was not the end. A mound of earth became a platform. A platform became a step. A step reached toward the stars. Each block added not just height, but meaning. Building without hurry. They didn't have machines. They had rhythm, ropes and sledges, copper chisels, water poured on sand to ease the drag. Thousands worked, but not as slaves, as many once thought. Most were skilled laborers, fed well, respected, offering their time to the pharaoh as part of sacred duty. They sang as they worked, they carved their names in hidden places, and they placed each stone with care, because each stone was a prayer. Geometry in the wind, the Great Pyramid of Giza wasn't just tall, it was exact. Its base is almost perfectly square. Its corners align with the cardinal directions. Its sides slope at 51 degrees, a number found in the stars. They didn't guess. They observed, using plumb lines, sun shadows, and patience. Even now, we marvel at their precision, and they did it all without rushing. The stones themselves, limestone for the outside, soft and bright, granite for the chambers, hard and eternal. They carried it from far quarries across the Nile, up ramps and hills. No part of the process was loud, no decision was careless. Each stone had a place, each place had a purpose. Even the air between stones mattered. A tomb, but not just that. The pyramids were tombs, yes, but not graves. They were staircases to eternity, houses for the soul, maps for the afterlife. Inside, chambers echoed with sacred geometry. Corridors pointed to stars. Symbols told stories of rebirth, of judgment, of eternal rest. The pharaoh didn't go alone. He went with wishes, rituals, and love carved in stone. The Great Pyramid, Khufu's pyramid. Over 2 million blocks, each weighing as much as a car, each lifted, aligned, placed with care. It stood for 3,800 years as the tallest structure in the world, built not with ambition, but with intention, to stand, to remember, to honor. Stars as guides, the ancient builders believed the stars were gods, messengers, watchers. They aligned their pyramids with Orion's belt, symbol of Osiris, the North Star for eternity, the rising sun for rebirth. They didn't just build for the earth, they built for the sky. A pyramid is a whisper. It does not shout, it does not glow, it does not move, but it stands through wind, through war, through time itself. And it tells us something simple, something important. To be remembered, you do not need to be loud, you need to be steady. Rest beneath the shadow. Now, as you close your eyes, picture warm stones cooling under the stars. Feel the hum of ancient chisels. Hear soft voices speaking names lost to time. You do not need to understand the pyramid. You only need to feel its peace. It has waited 4,000 years. It can wait a little longer, with you. Let's now leave the grand stones behind and walk quietly into the lives of everyday people, the ones who smiled, worked, played, and dreamed beneath the same sun. Everyday Egypt, the soft life of farmers, artists, and children, a gentle look at ordinary lives in an extraordinary land. The farmer's morning. The sun rose not with trumpets, but with warmth on the skin and the soft sound of water lapping at the edge of the field. A farmer stirred from sleep, his mat woven from reeds, his roof thatched with palm. He greeted the day with gratitude, not because it was perfect, but because it had returned. He stretched. He offered thanks to the river, and he stepped into his sandals to begin again. The rhythm of work. Work was not frantic. It followed the rhythm of the Nile. When it flooded, the fields rested. When it receded, they were rich and ready. Farmers tilled the earth with wooden plows. Oxen moved patiently, guided not by whips, but by gentle clicks of the tongue. Women wove baskets beside the fields, their fingers dancing between stalks of papyrus and palm. Children fetched water, giggled under the sun, and chased shadows across the sand. There was labor, but never loneliness. Work was shared. Laughter was part of it. The artists and makers. In quiet courtyards, painters dipped brushes into earth-colored pigments. They didn't rush. Each stroke had memory. Each line had life. They painted gods, yes, but also birds in mid-flight, lotus flowers in bloom, and cats curling in warm corners. Carpenters carved stools and beds from acacia. Potters shaped jars that would hold grain, water, and wine. Nothing was made without love. Nothing was wasted. Even broken pottery was recycled into new stories, scratched with writing, used for teaching. The children of Egypt. They wore little clothing in the heat. Their eyes sparkled like sunlight on water. Their games were simple, tossing pebbles in circles drawn in dust, playing ball with stuffed cloth and reeds, pretending to row boats on dry land. They sang songs their grandmothers once sang. They napped under shade trees. They learned by watching, not from books, but from hands, smiles, and stories. When a child was born, a name was chosen with care. Some names meant joy, others meant born in peace. Each one was a quiet wish whispered into the future. Inside the modest home, most families lived in homes made of mud bricks, cool in the summer, warm in winter. Inside, clay pots stood beside low stools. Shelves held bread, herbs, and oil. A small shrine honored the gods of the house. Meals were humble: bread, onions, lentils, honey, cucumbers, figs. Sometimes fish from the river. Sometimes beer made from barley, mild and thick, and always shared with others. The door was not a barrier, it was an invitation. Seasons of quiet celebration. Life was not only about work. There were festivals, quiet moments of joy, dancing to flutes under the stars, carrying statues of gods through flowered streets, sharing fresh dates and palm wine with neighbors. Families wore their best linen, eyes lined with kohl, hearts lightened by song. And when the sun set, they lit small oil lamps, gathered in circles, and listened to stories about animals that could talk, rivers that remembered dreams, and gods who once walked among the reeds. The creatures. They loved cats, lived among them, guardians and friends. Dogs kept watch at night. Ibises waded through fields, symbols of learning. Even scarabs, small beetles, were honored, not for their size, but for their quiet persistence. They rolled the sun, they believed, just as they rolled their tiny balls of earth. Every life had meaning. Every creature had purpose. Nightfall in the village. As the stars returned, families settled into rest. Fathers hummed lullabies. Mothers brushed sand from their children's cheeks. Grandparents whispered tales of the old kings, not for history, but for comfort. Outside, frogs croaked in the canals. Inside, oil lamps flickered gently. And sleep came, not in a rush, but like the river, calm, steady, warm. The beauty of the ordinary. Not all history is written in gold. Most of it lives in the footsteps of the quiet, in the hands that plant, the hearts that share, the smiles that welcome dawn without fanfare. This was Egypt, too, not of pharaohs, but of people, people who worked, who loved, who rested and dreamed under the same stars as you. So now, drift into sleep as if you're lying on a cool mat beside a quiet clay wall. Let the smell of warm bread and crushed herbs comfort your thoughts, and let the sounds of everyday Egypt lull you deeper into rest. Let us now walk slowly, beside queens, not with crowns of power, but with poise, vision, and the grace that shaped Egypt softly, from within. The queens walk, Nefertiti, Hatshepsut, and the grace of women, a soft telling of Egypt's most gentle rulers, women of the Nile. In ancient Egypt, women were not hidden. They owned land, they led prayers, they painted, wove, taught, farmed, and healed. And some, they ruled, but not with noise, not with thunder. They ruled like the river, steady, clear, and enduring. Let's walk with them. Nefertiti, the queen of beauty and belief. She stepped into history like a breeze, not demanding but undeniable. Nefertiti, whose name means the beautiful one has come, wife of Akhenaten, mother, priestess, queen. Her face, carved in limestone, remains one of the most serene images ever made. But she was more than beauty. She stood beside her husband in prayer, promoting the worship of the Aten, the sun disk. Together, they believed in warmth, light, and simplicity. She wore a tall blue crown, not as decoration, but as declaration. I am here, and I am enough. No wars, no blood, just reform, art, and devotion. Her city of light, Nefertiti, helped create Amarna, a new city for the new faith. Its buildings were open, filled with sunlight. Its art was tender, depicting hugs, kisses, laughter. Never before had royalty looked so human. She changed Egypt, not by conquering, but by softening. And when she vanished from history, she left no chaos, only questions and peace. Hatshepsut, the woman who became Pharaoh before Cleopatra, before Nefertiti. There was Hatshepsut, a woman who didn't just stand beside a throne, she sat on it. As Pharaoh, the crown was not made for her, but she wore it anyway. She wore the false beard, the royal skirt, and the titles of kings. Why? Not to pretend, but to protect. The throne needed strength, the people needed calm, and she became both. She ruled for over 20 years, and Egypt flourished. She built with beauty. Hatshepsut didn't build to show off. She built to last. Her temple at Deir el-Bahri still stands, soft white stone against the cliffs, terraced and shaded like a hymn to peace. She carved stories of her reign into the walls, a voyage to Punt, bringing incense and trees, offerings to gods, gifts to her people. There was no battle scene, no conquest, only prosperity. Her rule was a garden under Hatshepsut. Trade bloomed, art blossomed, temples were repaired, priests were respected, people lived in calm. She did not reign with fear. She reigned with flow, like the Nile, strong and silent. Remembered in stone and silence. After her death, some tried to erase her. They chiseled her name from walls, hid her statues, and whispered that she never ruled. But stone remembers, and so do the stars. And now, when we speak her name, softly, without force, she rises again. Many women, many roles. Egyptian women were not just queens. They were scribes, writing hymns in ink, healers making salves from honey and herbs, priestesses tending candles in sacred rooms, mothers singing lullabies that traveled across centuries, each one a note in Egypt's long lullaby. A queen's walk is not always loud. Some ruled, some guided, some simply lived with grace, but all were honored in hieroglyphs, in stone, in memory, and now in your dreams. Past the veil of this life into a world the Egyptians did not fear, but welcomed with reverence and grace. The afterlife is gentle, how the Egyptians prepared for forever, a peaceful passage through the beliefs of life. Afterlife, death was not the end. To the ancient Egyptians, death was not darkness. It was not punishment. It was not silence. It was a journey, a crossing, a continuation. And like all journeys, it required preparation, patience, and care. They believed the soul was not one thing, but many, each part with its own task, its own hope, its own path toward the stars. The soul has many names. The Egyptians saw the soul as having different parts. Ka, the life force. It needed food, comfort, familiar things. Ba, the personality. It had wings and could travel in dreams. Ak, the eternal form. A spark of divinity. Ren, the name which must be spoken to live on. Shiut, the shadow, quiet and ever-present. Each part mattered. Each part was loved. To honor the dead meant to keep their parts whole, balanced, safe. The burial was a beginning. When someone died, the family did not wail. They remembered. The body was washed, anointed with oils, wrapped in linen. Not as a prison, but as a cocoon. It was not buried quickly. It was cared for over many days. The embalmers were artists of peace. They spoke to the body as they worked. They whispered prayers. They tied amulets inside the wrappings, each one a wish, for protection, for peace, for reunion. The Book of Going Forth by Day. Today we call it the Book of the Dead, but the Egyptians called it something softer, the Book of Going Forth by Day. It was a guide, a comfort, a collection of spells, songs, and wisdom to help the soul move through the underworld. Not to escape danger, but to find the light. There were no monsters waiting, only gates to pass, questions to answer, truth to speak, the heart and the feather. At the end of the journey, the heart was placed on a scale. On the other side, a feather, not a sword, not gold, just a feather. It was the symbol of Mayat, truth, balance, harmony. If the heart was heavy with guilt, it would tip the scale. But if the heart was light, free of lies, cruelty, or greed, then the soul was welcomed home. A simple test, a gentle one. The field of reeds, the final reward wasn't a castle, it was a field, wide, green, still. The field of reeds was paradise, a mirror of Egypt, but without sorrow. There, loved ones waited. Boats glided on quiet waters. Harvests never failed. The sun was always warm, and the shade always cool. You worked, but with joy. You rested, but with purpose. And you never felt alone. A companion named Anubis. The journey into the afterlife was not made alone. The god Anubis, with the head of a jackal, walked beside you. He was not frightening. He was soft-footed, watchful, and kind. He guided the soul through narrow paths, protected it from confusion, and stood near the scales as a guardian, not a judge. Tombs as memory homes. The wealthy had tombs carved into rock, painted with soft colors and family scenes. But even simple graves had offerings, bread, beer, little statues of servants, called shabti, to help in the next life. Names written carefully so they would not be forgotten, because to forget a name was to lose a soul, and to speak a name was to bring them gently home again. They remembered their dead softly, not with loud mourning, but with candles, with flowers, with quiet visits to the tomb. They believed that as long as someone remembered your name, you still lived, somewhere. And even now, when we say Hatshepsut or Tutankhamun or Nefertari, we are whispering souls back into the light. Forever was not a fear. The Egyptians were not obsessed with death. They were in love with life. So much so they believed it must continue, gently, eternally. And that belief made them kinder, calmer, more patient with the present. Let us now step softly into the presence of kings, not with fanfare, but with stillness, not with noise, but with gaze. The pharaoh's silence, kings who ruled with still eyes, a gentle portrait of Egypt's quiet rulers, the still figure at the temple gate. He stands tall, carved in stone, eyes gazing beyond the horizon. He does not speak, but you feel his presence. He is the pharaoh, not just a king, but a bridge between earth and sky. In Egypt, the pharaoh was not loud. He didn't shout orders. He didn't gallop into battle with wild cries. He stood, he watched, and by simply being, he brought order. What made a king? To the Egyptians, a pharaoh was not chosen by blood alone. He was chosen by harmony, by Ma'at. If he kept the balance of the world between the gods, the river, and the people, he was king. He wore the crown, yes, but more importantly, he wore responsibility to guide, to listen, to preserve. And in silence, he showed strength. Djoser, the first builder. One of the earliest kings was Djoser. He did not build tall walls. He built a new kind of tomb, a step pyramid. Designed by his wise architect Imhotep, this structure rose gently into the sky. It was the first large stone building in history, not flashy, just enduring. Djoser's legacy was not in gold, it was in foundation. Senusret, builder of calm. Senusret I, a king of the Middle Kingdom, built temples not just for gods, but for the people. He restored shrines, taught priests, and kept the land united during quiet, fruitful years. Few know his name, but his work lasted centuries. That was enough for him. Amenhotep III, the listening king. Some kings left speeches. Amenhotep III left statues, dozens of them, sitting, watching, silent. He reigned in peace. He built Luxor Temple and the Colossi of Memnon, giant seated figures that watched the desert wind. They don't move, but they still speak, softly, of order, of stability, of quiet power. Tutankhamun, the child restored. He was just a boy, thrust into the throne after a time of chaos. Tutankhamun didn't conquer. He didn't expand the borders. He simply restored. He reopened temples. He brought back the old gods. He let the people return to familiar prayers. And though he died young, his tomb remained untouched. A soft voice hidden in sand for 3,000 years. When it was found, the world remembered him. Not for battles, but for wonder. Ramses II, the quiet giant, Ramses the Great, is often called Egypt's greatest king. Yes, he built many things. Yes, he fought many battles. But he also lived a long, peaceful reign, over 60 years on the throne. He built Abu Simbel, a temple with his face carved into stone, 4 times. But inside that temple the air is calm. The light enters only twice a year, touching statues with golden warmth. Ramses understood something modern rulers forget. Power is not in volume, It is in vision. Temples of kings, pharaohs built temples not just to impress, but to align with stars, with seasons, with truth. Their names were carved not in haste, but in symmetry, not to boast, but to belong to the flow of time. A king's duty, the pharaoh had to make offerings to the gods, judge fairly in disputes, ensure good harvests through ritual, protect the land and its peace. Even in war, his goal was to restore calm. Pharaoh meant great house, but it also meant anchor. He held the world steady by standing still, the silence of stone. Now their names echo through time, not because they shouted, but because they stood, still, balanced, present. They were not perfect, but they believed in order, and they passed it on. Then let us walk one final stretch along the Nile together, not with sadness, but with softness, because even when great things end, they can do so in peace. The fall without fear, how Egypt let go gently, a quiet reflection on the gentle twilight of a great civilization. Everything that rises, Egypt rose slowly, over thousands of years, like a sun that takes its time to reach the sky. And so it set the same way, not with fire, not with collapse, but like an old friend closing their eyes, content. Time kept moving, the world changed, new empires stirred, new languages echoed across the sand. The Persians arrived, then the Greeks, then the Romans. Each left their mark, a coin, a column, a name carved beside another. But Egypt didn't fight the tide. She let it flow. Like the Nile, she bent, but never broke. Alexandria, a gentle turning. When Alexander the Great came, he did not destroy. He admired. He built Alexandria, a city of scrolls and stars. There, Egyptian knowledge blended with Greek curiosity. Temples stood beside libraries. Statues of Isis stood beside philosophers. And the people still spoke of Osiris, still placed flowers at the feet of cats, still floated their prayers down the river. Even as the world tilted, Egypt whispered. The gods didn't vanish. Even when new gods were named, the old ones were not forgotten. In secret corners, people still lit candles for Hathor, still left milk for Bastet, still spoke to Ra as the sun crested the sky. Not loudly, not publicly, but always faithfully, because to an Egyptian, the gods lived in the wind, in water, in the way a lotus opens without being told. You couldn't erase that. You could only live beside it. The language grew quiet. Hieroglyphs, those dancing symbols of bird and sun and eye, faded from use. Fewer people wrote them. Even fewer could read them. But they were carved so deeply, etched so lovingly, they outlived every change. They waited patiently, until one day a stone, the Rosetta Stone, was found, and Egypt spoke again, not with sound, but with story, a civilization at rest. When Rome ruled Egypt, when temples were closed, when statues fell, Egypt did not cry out. She had seen the moon return too many times to fear the dark. She knew that memory was stronger than marble, that spirit was softer than sword, and stronger because of it. The Nile kept flowing. Even as empires rose and fell, the Nile still rose each year. It still spread its gift of silt, still welcomed birds, still held boats in its slow current. Children still played by its banks. Farmers still bent low to plant grain. Elders still told stories of gods and queens and stars. Egypt didn't die. She rested, like a sun that sets, knowing it will rise again. The people endured. Though rulers changed, the people, the soul of Egypt, remained. They carried bread wrapped in linen. They wore amulets shaped like eyes and ankhs. They walked barefoot on stone floors worn smooth by centuries. They spoke new languages, but in their silence they remembered the old ones, and when they looked at the pyramids, they did not see tombs, they saw promises. Letting go, gently Egypt didn't fall. She let go, like a reed boat drifting from shore, like incense rising into the dusk. She had given the world architecture, medicine, writing, astronomy, the idea that life could be beautiful. What more could she do? She bowed her head and became a dream, alive in every story, in every museum, in every quiet heart that wonders. What was Egypt really like? The final rest, let your eyes close. The river has brought you far, past temples, past thrones, past pyramids, prayers, and paintings of peace. And now you float, not in history, but in memory. Egypt has not vanished. Whispers of the Nile, a gentle journey through ancient Egypt. A calm story for restful nights where the river never sleeps. There is a river that remembers everything. It remembers the first breath of sunrise. It remembers the voices of kings. It remembers the feet of farmers, the laughter of children, and the soft prayers of those who watched the stars. That river is the Nile. It has no need to rush. It has never stopped flowing. And tonight, it will carry you gently through a land that still breathes, not in noise, but in memory. This is not a tale of battle. It is not a tale of treasure. It is a whisper of quiet temples, soft sand, cool shadow, and lives lived slowly, deliberately, with meaning. Let your mind rest beside the river now. Feel the warm hush of the air, and float. A story with no hurry. This journey has no urgency. It is a walk, not a race. A drifting reed boat, not a roaring chariot. You'll visit old cities that no longer need to be found. You'll hear from gods that ask only to be remembered, not feared. There will be no twists, no surprises, only comfort in ancient rhythm, like a heartbeat, soft, steady, slow. The river that watches time, a gentle beginning. Along the banks of the Nile, the first light before the gods had names, before the pyramids reached upward, before even the whisper of stone upon stone. There was water, still, deep, ancient. It did not speak in words, but in rhythm. The Nile flowed before memory began, and it flows still, carrying stories no one wrote, but everyone felt. Its current is not strong, but it is steady, always steady. Footprints at the edge. Long before kings, people walked along its edges. They cupped the water in their hands. They watched fish glint beneath the surface. They followed birds that danced above reeds. They didn't need maps. The river guided them. It was not just a source of water. It was a giver of life, time, seasons, and rest. Even now you can feel it, if you close your eyes. The inundation each year, the Nile rose, not in anger, but in promise. It overflowed its banks, spilling gentle black silt across the land. Farmers waited for it. Children watched for it. Priests thanked it. They called it a blessing, not a flood, because it left behind the richest soil, soft as flour, ready to grow grain, onions, papyrus. It was nature's quiet gift, arriving right on time. The river's routine. Mornings along the Nile were calm. Women washed clothes on flat stones, humming softly. Men cast nets with careful arms, catching silver flashes of fish. Children played with clay and reeds near the shore. Boats made of papyrus glided gently, carrying bundles of herbs and stories. There was no need to shout. The river didn't like shouting. It preferred song or silence. The spirits in the water people believed the Nile had a soul. It remembered the dead. It heard wishes. It carried messages to the gods. Offerings were placed on little floats of flowers, sometimes food, sometimes a note, sometimes a name. These offerings weren't requests. They were thank yous. Thank you for the water. Thank you for the calm. Thank you for coming back year after year. The Nile in their stories. In Egyptian myth, the river flowed from the tears of the goddess Isis, tears of love, of longing, of eternal patience. She cried when Osiris died, and the river rose. They believed the Nile was part of the divine cycle, not just a stream, but a path to forever. And so they treated it with care, not just because they needed it, but because they respected it. Nightfall beside the water. At sunset, the water turned gold, then purple, then deep black. Frogs sang in chorus, date palms rustled in the breeze, and lamps flickered in the distance. The world slowed down, and the river kept going, never stopping, never questioning, only flowing. And in that quiet movement there was comfort, a message without words. Everything changes, but peace is always possible. Let the river carry you, so now, as sleep begins to touch the edge of your mind, imagine a soft boat, a small one, just enough for you. It's tied to a wooden post. It waits. You step in, lie down. The stars above blink slowly, like ancient eyes watching over you. And the Nile begins to carry you gently forward, toward the next dream, toward the next story, toward the heart of ancient Egypt. Let us continue, then, into a chapter filled not with sermons or thunder, but with whispers of wind, flickers of flame, and gods that walked gently beside the people they loved. Gods in the breeze, the gentle faith of ancient Egypt, a quiet stroll through the spiritual heart of the Nile, faith in the air. The people of ancient Egypt didn't shout their prayers, they breathed them. Faith wasn't something loud, it was lived, softly, consistently, with reverence for all things. They saw the divine not just in temples, but in the breeze that moved the wheat, in the sun that warmed their bones, and in the night sky that held eternity in silence. Ra, the gentle watcher. Every morning the sun rose over the Nile, and with it came Ra, the sun god. He did not demand worship, he simply arrived, a golden circle in the sky, a promise that life would continue. They believed Ra traveled across the sky in a great boat, then beneath the earth each night, and still he returned each dawn, not with force, but with faithfulness. Isis, the loving one. Isis was not a god of war. She was a goddess of love, healing, protection, and quiet grief. She was the mother many prayed to, the sister who never gave up, the healer who knew every herb by heart. They told her story with gentle sadness. When her husband Osiris was taken from her, she wept, not in rage, but in mourning. From her tears, the Nile rose, and from her love, Osiris was restored. Isis taught the people that love is eternal and grief does not make one weak, only human. Anubis, the silent guide. Anubis, the jackal-headed god, did not frighten the people. He was quiet, careful, a protector of the dead. He did not shout. He watched. He walked beside souls as they entered the afterlife. They imagined his paws never made a sound. He moved like thought, like breath, like kindness at the moment it's needed most. Ma'at, the feather of truth. They believed in Ma'at, not just as a goddess, but as a principle, balance, harmony, rightness. She was not a warrior, she was a feather. They believed that in the end, the heart of every person would be weighed against Ma'at's feather. If the heart was heavy with lies, cruelty, selfishness, it would fail. But if it was light, with kindness, patience, truth, it would float gently upward. The lesson was not to fear judgment, but to live lightly. Bastet, the cat of comfort. Bastet, the cat goddess, was a friend, protector of homes, bringer of joy, guardian of sleep. People kept cats not just for mice, but for peace. They believed Bastet sat in the doorway of the home, keeping bad dreams and dark spirits away. She purred softly, in statue, in memory, in moonlight. Gods in every corner. There were gods for everything. Thoth, who wrote wisdom in moonlight. Hathor, who danced joy into the world. Sobek, the crocodile god who kept rivers flowing. They were not distant. They were present. In carvings, in names, in the way a mother braided her daughter's hair and whispered prayers without even realizing. Worship was gentle temples were not places of fear. They were places of rhythm. Light entered slowly, like a thought becoming clear. Incense curled like questions lifted to the sky. Candles flickered like memories coming home. Priests did not demand. They tended, to statues, to shrines, to silence. And the people? They visited, left offerings, and listened. Sometimes the best prayer was stillness. Faith was a part of life. They didn't wait for crisis to pray. They prayed when planting onions. They prayed when washing feet. They prayed when watching stars reflect in the Nile. Faith was not a burden. It was a blanket, soft, warm, constant. Sleep beneath the gods. Now, as night begins to fold over your thoughts, imagine resting beneath a sky filled with stars and stories, a temple in the distance, a flickering flame, the rustle of palm leaves above. The gods are not watching to judge. They are watching to guard. Not because you are perfect, but because you are loved. Then let us walk, very slowly, to where the desert meets the sky, where stones rise not with shouts, but with whispers. Stones that whisper, the soft rise of the pyramids, a calm journey through Egypt's most enduring monuments, a place where wind waits out beyond the farms, beyond the reeds and river sounds. The sand begins to hush the earth. There, the wind speaks in a different voice, slower, deeper, older. And rising from this golden silence are the pyramids, not like towers, not like walls, but like thoughts made solid in stone. They do not demand attention. They simply exist, watching, enduring, whispering. They were not built in a day. The pyramids were not sudden. They began as small steps. First, just mud brick mounds, then mastabas, flat tombs for the honored dead. And then, over time, with patience, with trial and care, they rose, block by block, into the sky. Djoser's steps, the first to rise, was not smooth. It was built for Djoser, a king who wanted to rest forever above the dust. His architect, Imhotep, dreamed of stacking stone like thoughts layered upward. And so the step pyramid was born. Not a skyscraper, a stairway, meant not to impress the world, but to touch the next one. Stones with memory. Each pyramid stone was placed by hand, not dropped, not forced. They were coaxed into position, pulled on wooden sleds, slid with wet sand, guided by ropes and rhythm. Workers sang, they joked, they paused for bread and figs. It wasn't just labor, it was devotion. Every stone held the touch of a person. Every person believed in what they were building. Who built them? Not slaves. That's a myth. The pyramids were built by craftsmen, artisans, masons, bakers, water bearers, team leaders. They lived nearby in villages. They had families, meals, dreams. They left behind graffiti. names of crews, little jokes carved in hidden spots. Proof that even great monuments can be made with laughter. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the most famous of all, built for Khufu. Over 2 million stones, each one the size of a small car, aligned perfectly with the stars, standing for 4,500 years. It is not hollow, not golden, not loud, but it is precise, enduring, quiet. You do not walk into it, you walk under it, humbled. Geometry and heaven, the pyramids were aligned not just with the land, but with the sky. Their corners faced the cardinal directions. Their shafts pointed to Orion, to the North Star, to eternity. They were not just tombs, they were tools to guide the soul, to connect earth and afterlife. Inside the stone, inside, the air is still, cool, sacred. No gold lines the walls, no crowds pass through. Just narrow passageways, hidden chambers, and quiet. The king's body once rested here, surrounded by silence, watched by the stars. It was not meant to be visited. It was meant to last. They whisper, not shout. Even now, they do not cry out. They do not blink lights. They do not need signs. They simply stand. When the wind brushes past their sides, it sounds like an old song, a hymn of patience, of effort, of purpose. They have no voices, but they have presence, and presence is louder than speech. Rest beside the stone. So tonight, lie gently in thought. Imagine the warm desert air brushing your cheek, a faint sound of footsteps in ancient sand, the soft scratch of limestone under the hand of a mason. Feel how still the pyramid stands. Feel how long it has watched. Feel how little it asks of you. Only that you rest and listen and know. Great things can be built quietly. Then let us leave the pyramids behind, just for a little while, and walk softly into the lives of the everyday people. Not kings, not gods, but those who made Egypt truly live. Everyday Egypt, the soft life of farmers, artists, and children. A gentle look at the daily rhythm of the ancient land mornings begin with the sun. In the early hours, long before the markets opened, Egypt woke gently. The sun rose without alarm, spreading gold across the quiet fields. Palm fronds rustled softly. Clay pots clinked as water was drawn from the well. Life in Egypt didn't begin with shouts. It began with rhythm, a child rubbing their eyes, a mother sweeping the dirt floor, a farmer reaching for his hoe, already smiling at the day ahead. Farmers and the gift of the flood. The Nile's flood was not feared. It was welcomed like an old friend returning home. When the water receded, it left behind a soft black blanket of silt, ready for seed. Men planted with wooden plows pulled by oxen. They wore linen, light against the sun. Their children followed behind, dropping seeds and sometimes chasing frogs. There was singing, there was laughter, and when the crops grew tall, the farmers didn't boast. They thanked the river, thanked the land, thanked the quiet gods who watched without words. The home was sacred. Egyptian homes were made from mud bricks, warm in winter, cool in summer. Inside, there was not much, but everything was meaningful. A reed mat, a low table, clay jars filled with oil or honey, a cat curled in the corner, blinking slowly. Even the walls told stories, painted or etched with flowers, birds, sometimes a name, always love. Each house was not just a shelter, it was a small universe. The artist's touch not every Egyptian farmed. Some painted, some carved, some built beauty into stone. Artists did not rush. They crushed pigments from earth, reds, ochres, deep blues from lapis lazuli. They painted with small brushes made from reeds, dipped in bowls of color. Every face on every tomb was painted with care, every eye open, every hand expressive, every god smiling just enough. And no signature was needed, because beauty was enough. Musicians and makers of joy music drifted through Egypt like wind through barley. Women played sistrums, rattles shaped like temples. Men plucked harps tall as themselves. Children clapped in rhythm. Songs weren't for fame. They were for connection, for prayer, for comfort, for love. And when there was no music, there was still rhythm. In walking, in grinding grain, in weaving, in breathing. Women and wisdom. Women kept the home, but also the stories. They healed with herbs. They made oils and perfumes. They baked bread that fed both body and spirit. Their voices were soft but firm. They whispered to the gods and to their children, passing down tales, recipes, reminders of who they were. Even the pharaohs had mothers, and every one of them listened. The children of the Nile. Children were not made to hurry. They played with clay animals, blew bubbles through reeds, chased each other through the tall grass. They wore amulets shaped like eyes or frogs, for protection, for luck. They learned from watching, not from being scolded. And when they slept near the river, where the frogs sang, and the breeze told stories no one had to speak aloud. Markets and midday. In the village markets, there was no shouting, just bartering with kindness. A few fish for a bit of linen, a basket of onions for a carved toy. Everything smelled of coriander, dates, and dust. People knew each other's names, and even the dogs lay calmly in the shade, trusting the day to unfold as it always had. Evenings are for rest. As the sun dipped low, the Nile caught its reflection like a mirror. Fires were lit, bread baked slowly in clay ovens. The family gathered. Someone told a story, someone sang, and the night settled not with fear, but with peace. The stars above were familiar, the gods were near, and the earth once again had been good. Sleep with the people. Tonight, lie still like the farmer, tired but content, like the artist, his hands speckled with blue, like the child, with sand still on her toes. You don't need a palace, you need a place, and Egypt, everyday Egypt, was full of them. Then step with bare feet across cool, ancient stone. Let the light fall slowly through high pillars. Let the walls speak not in words, but in stillness. Temples in the light, sacred places built for silence. A slow walk through Egypt's most peaceful sanctuaries. A temple is not just a building. It begins long before the entrance in the hush of early morning, in the dust brushed from sandals, in the slow approach through the palms. Temples in ancient Egypt were not made to impress. They were made to align with the sun, with the stars, with the spirit of the people. They were not loud. They were sacred spaces built for listening. Pillars like trees. As you enter a temple, you pass through rows of columns, tall, carved, covered in story. They rise like forests, each one different. Lotus blossoms, papyrus reeds, stone made to look like life. The roof is high and cool, like shade in a garden of quiet. And above, tiny slits of light fall like blessings. You don't walk through a temple, you float. Walls that speak in pictures. Every wall is carved, not to decorate, but to remember. Scenes of offerings, stories of gods, names of kings who wanted to be remembered not with monuments, but with meaning. The walls are not loud, they do not boast. They whisper, "This is how we lived. This is what we believed. We offer it to time." Temples that follow the sun. Many temples were built so that the morning sun would shine directly down the central corridor only on certain days of the year. The solstice, a king's birthday, a sacred festival. Light was not just natural, it was spiritual. It touched the back wall, lit up the face of a god, and disappeared. Not every day, just once in a while. Enough to remind the people the universe still watches. The sacred silence. In the deepest part of the temple, there was often a holy of holies. No sound entered here, no crowd gathered, just a small hidden space for the statue of a god. Only the high priest entered, only in darkness, only with reverence, not to speak, but to listen, and sometimes to light a single flame. The sounds outside. Though the inner chamber was still, the temple grounds were alive, but gently. Birds nesting in high beams, cats weaving between stone legs, a breeze that carried the smell of incense, the soft murmurs of pilgrims waiting in shade. It was not a place of performance, it was a place of presence. You did not have to believe in every god to feel welcome in a temple. You only had to pause. The people came slowly. They came with bread, flowers, oils in clay jars, questions in their hearts. Some prayed out loud, most whispered. Some just sat, not to ask anything, but to be. Because sometimes peace is prayer, and the temple offered both. Temple as compass. The temple pointed east to rebirth, west to rest, upward to the sky, inward to the soul. It reminded the people where they came from, and where they might go when this life grew quiet. It did not shout directions, it showed them, with shadow, with scent, with the weight of air that knew how to be still. The temple in the heart. You don't need to stand in Karnak or Luxor to feel the presence of a temple. Wherever there is stillness, there is a gate. Wherever there is meaning, there is a shrine. Wherever you are at peace, you are home. The temple was built from stone, but carried in spirit, and it can travel, even now, even with you. Sleep where light meets stone. Now close your eyes. Picture a golden column as tall as the sky. Light touches its side like a warm hand. You lean against it. You hear nothing but the sound of your own breath, slow, calm, safe. And as the temple grows dark with dusk, you do not leave. You rest in the stillness of sacred things. Then let us follow the soft path from stone temples to golden crowns, not toward power as force, but power as presence. Gods who walked among us, pharaohs and the peace of divine rule, a calm reflection on leadership, balance, and the gentle legacy of Egypt's kings. A king was more than a ruler. In ancient Egypt, a pharaoh was not just a man, not just a name on a cartouche. He was a bridge between the sky and the soil, between gods and gardens, between the past and what was possible. He didn't need to shout. He only needed to be. Chosen by Ma'at, each pharaoh took power not through conquest, but through the sacred principle of Ma'at, the balance of truth, order, and harmony. He was expected not to dominate, but to keep things right, to protect the Nile's rhythm, to honor the gods with grace, to make sure temples stayed tended, grain stayed fair, and hearts stayed light. He walked with the gods. Pharaohs were believed to be the living embodiment of Horus, the falcon god, and upon death they returned to Osiris, lord of the afterlife. But this didn't make them distant. It made them sacred in their responsibility. They were not worshipped for ego. They were trusted for their patience. A pharaoh's power was measured not in fear, but in stability. Daily routines of a divine king. Each morning, a pharaoh would rise not to thunder or trumpet, but to ritual. Priests bathed him in scented water. His linen was pressed. His body was anointed with oils. He was dressed like the dawn, wrapped in gold, white, and deep lapis blue. And then he sat, listened, decided, not in haste, not alone, but with advisors, priests, and stars overhead. He built with meaning. A pharaoh left monuments behind, not just to be remembered, but to honor the gods. He built temples for worship, pyramids for passage, roads for travel, granaries for the poor. He didn't say, "I did this." He said, "The gods guided my hands." And in doing so, he taught others how to give without claiming. He was judged by his peace. The best pharaohs were not those who conquered, but those under whom people slept easily. In their time, crops grew, art flourished, priests sang softly in their temples, and when the pharaoh grew old, there was no fear. He had already prepared for his passage into the afterlife and left the land calm. They had faces, too. Some pharaohs became legends. Khufu, who dreamed in stone. Thutmose III, who blended strength with discipline. Hatshepsut, a woman who ruled with elegance. Amenhotep III, who loved the arts. Akhenaten, who turned toward one son. Tutankhamun, who died young but glows eternal. Ramses II, who carved his name in the cliffs. But even these great rulers were once children beside the river. Even they had mothers who prayed for their hearts to remain soft. Pharaohs were prepared to let go. In their tombs, pharaohs were buried not with treasure, but with tools: a staff, a reed pen, a small boat carved of wood, a few shabti, tiny statues to help in the next life. Because even kings, in the end, needed help, and they knew that humility in death was as noble as honor in life. The pharaoh's peace. The greatest pharaohs did not rule with fear. They ruled with a belief that a calm kingdom was a strong one, that to be close to the gods was to be still inside, that every action, every word, every offering, every law must reflect Ma'at. And when it did, the land flourished like a field after flood. Sleep beneath the crown, so rest now beneath the shadow of kings who never shouted. Feel the soft weight of a golden headdress. Feel the cool breeze through the palace garden. Smell the incense of blue lotus. Hear the scratch of a scribe's pen recording a reign of peace. This is not a history of conquest. This is a lullaby of leadership, and it carries you gently into dreams of harmony. Then come softly into the courtyards of calm power, where queens walked not behind, but beside the thrones of Egypt. Their steps were not loud, but they changed everything. The queen's walk, Nefertiti, Hatshepsut, and the grace of women, a soft journey through the wisdom, strength, and stillness of Egypt's great queens. Women were the thread. In ancient Egypt, women were not hidden. They were not silent. They were woven into every part of life: home, temple, throne, and tomb. They gave birth to kings. They guarded the gods. They healed, ruled, built, and remembered. And they did so not by shouting, but by walking with grace. Hatshepsut, the queen who became pharaoh. She began as queen, wife of a king, daughter of royalty. But when the throne sat empty, Hatshepsut did not wait in the shadows. She stepped forward and became pharaoh. She wore the false beard. She took the title. She ruled for over 20 years. But her reign was not filled with war. It was filled with peace. She built great temples, sent ships to distant lands, planted trees in dry places. Under her care, Egypt bloomed, not through conquest, but through cultivation. And her people loved her because she led not with fear, but with wisdom. Nefertiti, the queen who brought light. Nefertiti's name meant the beautiful one has come. And she did, like sunrise over water, like a quiet change in the wind. She ruled beside Akhenaten, a pharaoh who believed in one sun, one God, one light. And Nefertiti was that light. You can see her still, in that famous bust with the long neck, the proud eyes, the serene mouth, that speaks without sound. But she was not just beautiful, she was powerful. She helped guide a whole nation into a new way of thinking, and she did it with elegance, not force. Queens of the people. Not every queen wore a crown. Some were farmers' wives who gave birth to poets. Some were priestesses who kept temples clean and sacred. Some were midwives, hands stained with blood and blessings. Every woman in Egypt was seen as life-giver, as balance-bringer, as one who carried the river inside her. Their power was not loud, but it shaped the world. The rituals of royal women queens began their day in silk silence, bathed in perfumed water, dressed in linen white as clouds, adorned with turquoise, lapis, and gold. They offered prayers, they poured oil on altars, they greeted the rising sun with stillness and poise, and then they met the day, not as ornaments, but as partners in rule. Symbols of soft power queens were often shown with lotus flowers for rebirth and serenity, cats for watchfulness and protection, vultures not as threats, but as mothers who shield ankhs, the symbol of life given and guarded. Every image told a story of gentleness and guidance, of strength that didn't roar, but simply remained. Their names in stone. Many queens left marks on temples and tombs. Ti, wife of Amenhotep III, was honored beside her king as an equal. Ahmose Nefertari, a great royal wife, became a goddess after her death, honored for generations. Cleopatra, centuries later, would speak many languages, lead armies, and still be remembered as a woman of mind and grace. Their stories were not erased. They were carved, not with vanity, but with legacy. The Queen's Garden. At twilight, many queens walked in the gardens of their palaces. They touched blossoms, spoke to priests, sat by lotus ponds, and they thought. They planned festivals, listened to music, watched the stars begin to glow. Their power wasn't only in public. It lived in quiet vision. Rest with the queens, now lie gently beneath a sky Nefertiti once watched. Feel the soft linen of royal sleep. Hear the echo of a flute playing far off. Smell jasmine pressed into oil by quiet hands. You are not in a story of war. You are in the garden of queens who ruled with calm hearts and steady minds. And in their peace, you may rest. Then let us move softly now, from the realm of breath and sunlight into the land beyond the horizon, not a place of fear, but of gentle return. The afterlife is gentle, death, memory, and the road beyond the Nile. A peaceful walk into the Egyptian belief in what comes next. Death was not an ending. To the ancient Egyptians, death was never the end. It was a departure, yes, but only toward another room in the same great house of existence. They did not dread it. They prepared for it, honored it, and believed that what came after was still part of life. The western horizon. They believed the soul traveled west, toward the setting sun, toward the realm of Osiris. The western desert, beyond the Nile, was not barren. It was the beginning of the next journey, a place of judgment, yes, but also of reunion, of peace, of eternal fields. The weighing of the heart. In the hall of two truths, the soul stood before the gods, and Anubis, silent guardian, weighed the heart against the feather of Maat, the symbol of truth and lightness. If the heart was heavy, the soul could not continue. But if it was light, free of cruelty, greed, or dishonor, the soul passed on to the field of reeds, a heaven that mirrored the Nile Valley. The field of reeds, imagine it now, a calm, endless place where the wheat grows tall and the water flows gently. Loved ones wait with open arms. Homes are rebuilt, children laugh, and no one goes hungry. The field of reeds was not filled with gold. It was filled with familiar joy, just as life had been, but softer, without time, without pain. The solar boat, some believed the soul sailed across the sky with Ra, the sun god. By day, they journeyed through sunlight. By night, through darkness, battling chaos, not alone, but together. The boat was never still, because the soul never slept. But it was peaceful motion, a celestial cruise across eternity. The tomb was a home. Egyptian tombs were not meant to trap. They were carefully prepared homes for the soul's transition, painted with stories, stocked with food, tools, music, and hope, adorned with prayers. They weren't built in fear of death. They were built in honor of life, to guide the soul gently, to say, "You are still remembered. You are still loved." The Book of the Dead, not a book of terror, but a guide, a scroll of spells, songs, and encouragement. It reminded the soul, speak truth, respect all beings, pass through fire and water, and you will not be harmed. It was a companion, not a punishment. It said, you do not walk alone. Memory is immortality. Even today, names carved in stone are still read. That is the true afterlife, to be remembered. A son whispering a prayer, a statue touched by sunlight, a story told to a child. The Egyptians believed that as long as your name was spoken, your soul still walked the earth in light. Sleep as if you were eternal. Now close your eyes. Imagine a soft bark floating down a quiet river under stars. A candle flickers. A breeze stirs the linen at your feet. You are not afraid. You are not alone. You are on the same road that millions once walked, not with fear, but with trust. And as you drift, remember, in Egypt, even the end is full of beginning. Then let us stay a while in a place where time does not tick, but flows, softly, like the river that shaped a civilization. Time slows down, the calendar, the seasons, and the rhythm of the Nile, a gentle journey through the flow of days in ancient Egypt. Time measured by the river. In modern life, time feels like a race, but in ancient Egypt, time was a cycle, a circle, a slow, steady rhythm, measured not by clocks, but by the Nile. They didn't count every second. They listened for seasons. They waited for signs, the rise of water, the return of a star, the flowering of a tree. To them, time wasn't chasing you. It was holding you. 3 gentle seasons. The Egyptian year had 3 seasons, not 4. Each flowed like part of a sacred breath. 1. Akhet, the inundation, mid-June to October. The Nile floods, the river rises, the banks disappear beneath water. But this was not chaos. It was a gift. The water brought black silt, soft and rich, to feed the land. Farmers rested. Temples gave thanks. Boats drifted over fields that would soon grow green. The land breathed in. 2nd Pere, the growing season, October to February. The waters recede. Farmers return to the soil. Seeds are planted. Barley, emmer wheat, flax. Children help. Cattle walk in slow circles. The days are cool. The work is calm. And every evening the fields turn gold under the setting sun. The land grows. 3. Shemu, the harvest, February to June. Crops are tall. Sickles swing. Grain is stored in clay jars, offerings are made, songs are sung. The people prepare for rest, not from exhaustion, but from completion. The land gives back. The star that marked the year. Every year, without fail, just before the floods, a star returned to the sky, Sirius, the dog star. Its appearance marked the new year. The people watched for it like a friend. They lit lamps. They offered bread. They whispered its name. This was not superstition, it was connection, a way to say, we are in rhythm with something greater. A calendar of balance. Egyptians had a calendar, with 12 months of 30 days each. Then 5 special days were added at the end. Holy days, birthday days, days outside of time. Each day began at sunrise, not midnight, not rush, just light and presence, festivals of rest. Throughout the year there were days of joy, the festival of the valley, to honor ancestors, the Opet festival, a slow parade of gods through Thebes, the Wag festival, remembering the departed with floating lanterns, New Year's Day, when Sirius rose and the Nile began again. These festivals were not wild, they were gatherings, feasts, dances in the street, songs under stars, and then gentle return to rhythm. Time inside the heart. Even personal life followed a soft timeline. Birth, naming, education, marriage, legacy, death, afterlife. There was no rush to grow, no push to achieve. Each stage was honored as its own sacred moment. You were not late. You were exactly where you needed to be. Sleep in rhythm. Now let go of urgency. Breathe like the Nile, rising, falling, resting. Let the star of Sirius blink above you. Let the wind carry the scent of harvest. Let time slow around you. Not stop, but soften. And as you sleep, remember, in ancient Egypt, the calendar was not a cage. It was a companion. Let us now step into a world not of noise or motion, but of color and quiet vision, where every shape, every stroke was created not for glory, but for eternity. Eternal beauty, art, color, and the gentle eye of the ancient world. A slow look at the soft, lasting beauty in Egyptian art and expression. Art meant to last forever. In ancient Egypt, art was not just for display. It wasn't about fame or fashion or fleeting trends. It was created with one goal, to endure, to speak gently across centuries, to preserve memory, to make beauty feel like stillness. The language of color. Egyptian artists used a palette as calm as the land itself. Blue for the sky, the Nile, the heavens above green, for life, for growth, for the breath of plants, red, for power, for vitality, for warmth, yellow for gold, the sun, and the skin of gods, black for the rich earth, for rebirth, white for purity, for linen, for sacredness. Every color had meaning. Every stroke was a prayer. They didn't paint for excitement. They painted for truth. Gentle lines and balanced forms. Look at any Egyptian figure. The side-facing face, the front-facing shoulders, the stillness of every pose. These were not mistakes. They were choices, because balance meant beauty. Clarity meant harmony. The body was drawn not as it looked in chaos, but as it felt in spirit. Every image was like a calm sentence, measured, clear, peaceful. Scenes of ordinary wonder. Egyptian walls were covered in scenes, but not of battles or conquest, of life. A fisherman casting a net, a woman braiding another's hair, a boy chasing a goose, a scribe dipping his reed. Even kings were shown playing, drinking from a goblet, holding a flower. To the Egyptians, the ordinary was already sacred, symbols that breathe. They loved symbols, but not for confusion, for connection. An ankh meant life. A scarab meant rebirth. A lotus meant new beginnings. A sun disk meant divine light. A cat meant protection, peace, and quiet grace. These images weren't hidden meanings. They were reminders, simple shapes carrying deep calm. The eye that watched kindly. One of the most famous symbols, the eye of Horus. Not angry, not fierce, just watching, protecting, healing. It was placed in tombs, painted on boats, carved into amulets. A silent comfort. a gentle guard against all things unseen, beauty in every craft. Egyptians made beauty everywhere, not just in painting. Their pottery was smooth and simple. Their jewelry sparkled with lapis and turquoise. Their chairs, their sandals, their combs, all shaped with care. Even a spoon was made to feel elegant in the hand. Artists were remembered. They weren't anonymous. Some signed their work, some were buried with honors, some were praised in papyrus poems, because creating calm was a sacred gift. Artists weren't showmen, they were keepers of eternity. Sleep in beauty, now let your mind become a wall in a sunlit tomb. Let calm images appear, a lotus opening slowly, a scribe at rest with his scroll, a soft, steady river behind them. There is no need to speak, no need to judge. Just let the color, the balance, and the stillness hold you. Because in ancient Egypt, beauty was not a moment, it was a way of being. The gentle rise and fall of the Roman Empire. A 3-hour sleep story told softly for the curious soul, not with a roar, but with a whisper. Rome was not built in a day, and it did not fall in one either. It rose slowly, like a sun over 7 hills, warm, golden, and filled with promise. And it faded the same way, not in collapse, but in the soft shuffle of sandals down empty roads, in the long quiet of marble cooling beneath shadow. This is not a story of battles, not tonight. No clashing swords or thundering legions. This is the story of time, of cities that learned to breathe, of fountains that once laughed with water, and of people who built forever, stone by stone, with steady hands and long vision. Lie back now, let the columns rise gently around you, let the Tiber's soft water carry your thoughts. We're going to ancient Rome, but we're taking the scenic path. Hook, a city that dreamed in marble Rome, is remembered for its empire, but before that it was a village of huts, simple, humble, close to the earth. This story begins there, not with conquest, but with a shepherd, and it ends not in fire, but in stillness. So come, no rush. We'll walk the Via Appia under a sleepy moon. We'll hear the faint echo of sandals from 2,000 years ago. You don't need to remember dates. You don't need to stay awake. This is not a history lesson. It is a lullaby, told in Latin dreams. Let us begin, then, with a river, a basket, and 2 tiny lives cradled by fate. The twin shadows of the wolf, Romulus, Remus, and the river's first whisper. The Tiber moves slowly. Long before Rome, before walls, before emperors and aqueducts, there was a river, the Tiber, not grand, not loud, but steady, silver in the morning light, soft as a breath by moonlight. And one day, cradled in its arms, a woven basket floated by. Inside, 2 newborn boys, sleeping, breathing, unaware they were history's first heartbeat. A mother with fur and warmth. The legend is simple. A she-wolf found them, hungry, crying, too small to be anything but fragile. But she didn't growl. She didn't leave. She lay beside them. Her body became a blanket. Her breath, like the wind through olive trees. She fed them, protected them, raised them, and in time they grew strong. Romulus and Remus, brothers, bound not just by blood, but by the wildness of the world that saved them. The shepherd's quiet life. Later, a shepherd named Faustulus found them. He did not ask questions. He simply brought them home, to his wife, his hearth, his small world of fields and stars. The boys grew up chasing goats, laughing in fig groves, listening to cicadas buzz in warm grass. They didn't yet know their fate. They just lived, as children should, fully, quietly, close to the earth. Hills that waited. There were 7 hills near the river, empty, open, watching. Each had a name, but not yet a story. Romulus and Remus would one day choose one, build on it, shape it. But for now, the hills were just places to run, to watch birds, to rest under pine trees and whisper secrets. Time wasn't rushing, it was waiting. A brotherly divide. As the boys grew into men, their dreams grew too, and dreams, even the softest, can divide. One day they disagreed on where their new city should stand. Romulus chose one hill, Remus chose another. The air grew tense, words turned into wounds, and in a moment that hurt history itself, Romulus struck Remus down. Grief in the foundations, Romulus stood alone, victorious, but changed. He built the city, named it Rome, but not with joy, with grief, with silence. He marked the place where Remus fell. He wept, even as the stones were set. Rome was born, not with a trumpet, but with a shadow. Sleep beneath the wolf star. Now rest. Close your eyes and imagine the soft sound of river water, a wolf breathing beside a fire, a shepherd humming an old song, 2 stars twinkling above the hill where a city will rise. This is where Rome began, not with empire, but with warmth, loss, and quiet strength. Let your breath follow the Tiber tonight and drift into the dreams of stone. Then let us continue slowly, as Rome did, stone by stone, step by patient step, not with noise, but with rhythm, not in haste, but in harmony. From mud brick to marble, the slow growth of a city, called Rome, a gentle walk through the rise of the eternal city, the village before the glory, before the marble, before the arches, before the grandeur of empires. Rome was a village, homes made of mud brick and straw, roofs thatched with dried reeds, walls soft and warm with earth's scent. It was not yet magnificent, but it was lived in. Goats in courtyards, children's laughter rising in the mist, olive trees nodding over open doors. A city's foundation isn't only stone, it is routine. It is morning fires, evening bread, and hands brushing dust from cheeks. Life on the hills. The Palatine Hill, where Romulus stood, became the heart. But others soon followed. Aventine for workers and dreamers, Calian, where stonecutters chipped slowly, Esquiline, blooming with gardens, Capitoline, destined to carry temples, Quirinal, home of artisans, Viminal, where the future softly waited, each hill had its voice. Together they hummed the first song of Rome. Roads without rush streets were not yet straight. They curved like old vines. They followed memory, not maps. People walked, carried baskets, paused to speak, not scroll. Every step was part of Rome's becoming, not a plan, but a pulse. Markets, breads, and bargains. In the forum, still simple, still open, early traders laid their goods. Clay pots with rippling edges, honey sealed in fig leaves, cheese wrapped in woven grass, fresh loaves warm from dome ovens. People bartered softly, no shouting, no coins yet, just trust. Take this, I'll come back tomorrow. That was enough. Builders of quiet fame. Rome did not build with slaves yet. Not now. It built with neighbors, with family, stone by hand, timbers lifted not by cranes, but by brothers. The first temples were modest, built for protection, not pride. Even the first city wall was a suggestion, a boundary of hope, not of fear. Wells and water before aqueducts stretched like arms across valleys. There were wells, shallow, shared, sung into. Women drew water in the morning mist. Children carried jars. Men splashed faces before working in the fields. The first fountains were made of stone bowls and small flowing dreams. A city that slept softly. As the sun fell over the hills, Rome dimmed gently. No lanterns yet, only firelight. No horns, only crickets and tired feet. Families gathered under low roofs. Goats nestled close to clay ovens. Stories were passed like bread. And Rome, still small, curled in on itself and sighed. Tomorrow would come. It always did. Sleep like a citizen. Now rest with them. Hear the slow lull of sandals in dust. Feel the heat of the clay walls. Taste the air, olive, smoke, and fig. You are part of something growing, not rushing, becoming, because even marble starts as mud and patient hands. Then let us continue slowly, as Rome did, stone by stone, step by patient step, not with noise, but with rhythm, not in haste, but in harmony, from mud brick to marble, the slow growth of a city called Rome, a gentle walk through the rise of the eternal city, the village before the glory, before the marble, before the arches, before the grandeur of empires. Rome was a village, homes made of mud brick and straw, roofs thatched with dried reeds, walls soft and warm with earth's scent. It was not yet magnificent, but it was lived in. Goats in courtyards, children's laughter rising in the mist, olive trees nodding over open doors. A city's foundation isn't only stone, it is routine. It is morning fires, evening bread, and hands brushing dust from cheeks. Life on the hills. The Palatine Hill, where Romulus stood, became the heart. But others soon followed. Aventine for workers and dreamers. Caelian, where stonecutters chipped slowly. Esquiline, blooming with gardens Capitoline, destined to carry temples. Quirinal, home of artisans Viminal, where the future softly waited. Each hill had its voice. Together they hummed the first song of Rome. Roads without rush streets were not yet straight. They curved like old vines. They followed memory, not maps. People walked, carried baskets, paused to speak, not scroll. Every step was part of Rome's becoming, not a plan, but a pulse. Markets, breads, and bargains. In the Forum, still simple, still open, early traders laid their goods. Clay pots with rippling edges, honey sealed in fig leaves, cheese wrapped in woven grass, fresh loaves warm from dome ovens. People bartered softly. No shouting, no coins yet, just trust. Take this, I'll come back tomorrow. That was enough. Builders of quiet fame. Rome did not build with slaves yet, not now. It built with neighbors, with family, stone by hand. Timbers lifted not by cranes, but by brothers. The first temples were modest, built for protection, not pride. Even the first city wall was a suggestion, a boundary of hope, not of fear. Wells and water before aqueducts stretched like arms across valleys. There were wells, shallow, shared, sung into. Women drew water in the morning mist. Children carried jars. Men splashed faces before working in the fields. The first fountains were made of stone bowls and small flowing dreams. A city that slept softly. As the sun fell over the hills, Rome dimmed gently. No lanterns yet, only firelight. No horns, only crickets and tired feet. Families gathered under low roofs. Goats nestled close to clay ovens. Stories were passed like bread. And Rome, still small, curled in on itself and sighed. Tomorrow would come. It always did. Sleep like a citizen, now rest with them. Hear the slow lull of sandals in dust. Feel the heat of the clay walls. Taste the air, olive, smoke, and fig. You are part of something growing, not rushing, becoming, because even marble starts as mud and patient hands. Would you like to continue with Chapter 3, The Gentle Weight of the Republic, Laws, Laurel, and the People's Voice next? You said, Chapter 3, The Gentle Weight of the Republic, Laws, Laurel, and the People's Voice. Next? Yes, ChatGPT said, then let us walk into a new age, not ruled by kings, but shaped by voices, not built on command, but on quiet consensus. The kingdom has ended, the republic begins. But even now, Rome moves not with haste, but with deliberation. Chapter 3, The Gentle Weight of the Republic, Laws, Laurel, and the People's Voice. A calm, look at how a city began to govern itself. When kings became memories, Rome had once had kings, 7 of them. Tall names carved in memory, but kings grow heavy, and people, even calm, patient people, yearn to share the load. So one day, after the last king left in shadow, Rome stood up, not with weapons, but with words. The people chose instead to rule by law. The result? Not chaos, but the republic. Laws carved in calm. The laws came slowly, debated under trees, scratched on wax tablets, read aloud by candlelight, until finally they were carved into bronze. The 12 tables, simple rules, clear expectations, a father's duties, a neighbor's rights, a merchant's oath. They were not perfect, but they were shared, and sharing gave Rome a new peace. The people's voice. The Roman Republic wasn't ruled by one, it was ruled by many. There were consuls, 2 at a time, so no man stood too tall. There were senators, old and wise. They wore togas, not crowns. There were tribunes, chosen by the common people to speak, to protect, to gently say no when needed. And the people? They gathered in assemblies, not shouting, but deciding. This was government as an act of listening, the laurel, not the crown. A crown was for kings, and kings were gone. Instead, Rome gave its heroes a laurel wreath. Green, simple, woven from leaves. It faded quickly, but that was the Then let us walk into a new age, not ruled by kings, but shaped by voices, not built on command, but on quiet consensus. The kingdom has ended, the republic begins. But even now, Rome moves not with haste, but with deliberation. The gentle weight of the republic, laws, laurel, and the people's voice, a calm. Look at how a city began to govern itself. When kings became memories, Rome had once had kings, 7 of them. Tall names carved in memory, but kings grow heavy, and people, even calm, patient people, yearn to share the load. So one day, after the last king left in shadow, Rome stood up, not with weapons, but with words. The people chose instead to rule by law. The result? Not chaos, but the republic. Laws carved in calm. The laws came slowly, debated under trees, scratched on wax tablets, read aloud by candlelight, until finally they were carved into bronze. The 12 tables, simple rules, clear expectations, a father's duties, a neighbor's rights, a merchant's oath. They were not perfect, but they were shared, and sharing gave Rome a new peace. The people's voice. The Roman Republic wasn't ruled by one, it was ruled by many. There were consuls, 2 at a time, so no man stood too tall. There were senators, old and wise. They wore togas, not crowns. There were tribunes, chosen by the common people to speak, to protect, to gently say no when needed. And the people? They gathered in assemblies, not shouting, but deciding. This was government as an act of listening. The laurel, not the crown. A crown was for kings, and kings were gone. Instead, Rome gave its heroes a laurel wreath. Green, simple, woven from leaves. It faded quickly. But that was the point. Power was not permanent, and true honor was soft, like sunlight through vines. A republic of rituals. Even politics had a rhythm. When a man spoke, he covered his head. When a law was passed, bells were rung. When debates ended, silence followed. And silence meant respect. Voices, not violence. Not every debate was gentle, but most were peaceful. They believed in argument, not anger. In fact, one of Rome's proudest tools was not a sword, but the veto. It meant, "I forbid," a soft word with strong power, used to protect the people from harm. No shouting, just a pause. Temples of trust. As the Republic grew, so did its temples. For Jupiter, the great protector. For Juno, the mother of the state. For Minerva, wise and still. They weren't just places of prayer. They were places of public meeting, calm thought, and shared purpose. The Republic at dusk. The Republic would last for centuries. It would face war, greed, glory, ambition. But in these early years, it was quiet strength, a whisper of shared rule in a world of shouting tyrants. Rome didn't just build cities, it built an idea. The people matter. Sleep with the Senate, now rest. Picture marble columns bathed in afternoon light, the soft echo of sandals on stone floors, scrolls stacked neatly, voices lowered, not raised. This was Rome's dream, not of domination, but of balance. Let that balance cradle you tonight. Then come. Let us follow the path laid by patient hands, stones pressed into earth, not for war, but for walking. Rome built roads not just to conquer, but to connect, to reach, to carry, to remember. These were not roads of haste, they were roads of peace. Roads of peace, the builders, the stones, and the soft conquest of distance. A gentle journey along the paths that made Rome eternal. The first stone. There was a time when Rome was a village, and its world was only hills and neighbors. But as it grew, so too did its need to wander, to share, to carry news, bread, law, and love. And so, one day, a man placed a stone, flat, heavy, measured, then another, and another, until there was a path, wide enough for a cart, smooth enough for sandals. The Via Appia was born, and with it, the Roman road. More than dirt. These weren't simple trails, they were masterpieces, layers of earth, gravel, limestone, and paving stones, all laid by hand. No machines, just sweat and sun and silent focus. At the top, smooth slabs, fit so well that time itself had to squeeze between them. They built not for today, but for always. Roads with purpose. Every road had a goal, a destination, a reason. But they also had something softer, a promise, that if you walked far enough, with patience, you would arrive. Travelers and traders, these roads didn't carry armies every day. They carried people, a farmer with figs in a cart, a merchant with fabric and honey, a mother taking her child to a distant temple, a poet walking alone, composing in his mind. No rush, no horns, just footsteps and birdsong, milestones and rest. Every Roman mile, about 1,000 paces, was marked with a stone. It didn't shout. It whispered, "You are here. You are not lost." Along the way, resting places, shade trees, fountains, and small shrines. Even the journey was treated with care. Roads that touched the world over time, the roads stretched like open arms, north to Gaul, south to Carthage, east to Byzantium, west to the sea. But every road, no matter how far it wandered, led home. They all returned to the golden milestone in the Roman Forum, the center of the world, quiet in the morning sun. The hands behind the stones, We must not forget the builders. Some were citizens, some were slaves, all were human. They cut, lifted, and aligned, not for praise, but for function, for future feet. Their names were not carved in triumph, but they are remembered in every road that still lies straight, thousands of years later. Roads at dusk. Imagine a Roman road at dusk. The sun behind the pines, the stones glowing gold, a breeze carrying lavender and ash. You are not alone. You never were. These roads were made for companionship. Sleep on the stone path. Now lie back. Close your eyes. You are walking slowly on smooth stones. No noise, no end, just the feeling of movement, measured, steady, kind. The Roman road is not hurrying you. It is carrying you to somewhere safe, to somewhere soft, to sleep. Then let us walk quietly beside the soldiers, not in battle, but in order. For the Roman legion, before it ever raised a sword, learned first to walk in rhythm, to breathe together, to stand as one body, strong and silent. The soft strength of the legion, shields, sandals, and silent discipline, a gentle portrait of the soldiers who carried Rome's calm. Across the world, sandals that moved empires, they wore caligae, thick sandals, open to the sun, yet strong enough for 1,000 miles. Strapped with care, layered with leather, they left prints in snow, sand, and memory, not built for speed, but for endurance. And when a legion marched, the earth itself listened. Shields like doors, each soldier carried a scutum, a curved shield as tall as his chest, painted with symbols, eagles, lightning, laurels. But it was not for show. It was for protection, for standing together. Shields overlapped, bodies followed. The legion was not a storm. It was a wall. Discipline, like a song. In the quiet between wars, the legion trained. They marched in silence. They drilled in heat. They built camps with walls, roads, kitchens. They wrote letters to family. They cleaned, sharpened, folded, prayed. This too was strength, the calm of routine, the comfort of order. Even far from home, a soldier had his rhythm. Battles, brief and braced war, when it came, was not chaos. The legion prepared for days, measured ground, built fortifications, ate sparingly, slept in shifts, and when the moment came, they did not scream. They breathed, raised shields, and advanced in steady pace. Victory was earned not by fury, but by calm, cold practice. A soldier at night. At night, a soldier might sit alone, oil lamp flickering, letters on his lap, the slow comb of fingers through helmet straps, the ache of his feet softened by cool earth. He missed his vineyard, his sister's laugh, the river by his father's field. But here, in this camp, under stars, he belonged. Voices from far away. Each legionary received letters, delivered across mountains by runners and ships. The paper smelled of home. It carried words like, "We are proud. The olives ripened late this year. Your son says your name when he sleeps." These were weapons, too, the weapons of memory and meaning, the builders of peace. The legions didn't only fight, they built roads, bridges, forts, aqueducts. They helped stitch the empire together, not with fire, but with stone. Everywhere they went, they left behind not only footprints, but foundations. A quiet kind of power. The true strength of Rome's legions was not loud. It was their discipline, their ability to wait, to obey, to protect each other without question. Their legacy isn't only in battles won, but in the paths they cleared, the languages they heard, and the order they carried with them. Sleep beside the Legion. Now rest. You are beside a campfire. The stars stretch above the Alps. A soldier hums an old tune. His shield rests beside his bedroll. The ground is cool. The silence is safe. The Legion is not marching tonight. It is watching over you. Then let us leave the camps behind and return to where life breathes gently, in courtyards shaded by vines, in fountains that never rush, and in rooms built not for war, but for rest. Rome was not only a city of laws and legions, it was a city of homes, and in those homes, between cool stone walls and sunlit patios, the soul of Rome was quietly alive. The gentle beauty of Roman homes, courtyards, fountains, and the architecture of rest, a peaceful walk through Roman living where silence had shaped a house that breathed step into a Roman domus. The door is wooden, warm with age. The threshold is smooth, walked by many feet, but never worn thin. There is no grand fanfare inside, only space and air and calm. In the center, the atrium, a wide open room with a small pool beneath the sky. Rainwater falls into it gently, a mirror of clouds, a drink for birds. This is not just a room, it is a pause between busy hours, a breath between lives. Courtyards of stillness. Beyond the atrium lies the peristyle garden. Columns circle a square of life. Shrubs trimmed into soft curves, statues tucked under fig trees, poppies bending toward the light, fountains that murmur, not roar. A turtle slides between flower pots. A sparrow chirps once, then settles. The family sits here in the heat of noon, not to talk, but to be. Rooms with rhythm, the house has no rush. Each room flows to the next with patience. Cubicula, bedrooms lined with mosaics, with oil lamps for dreams. Tablinum, a study of scrolls and quiet reflection. Triclinium, a dining room where people recline, not just eat lararium. A small altar to honor ancestors, lit softly each evening. Even the walls are not plain. They tell stories, painted in calm reds and soft ochres, pastoral scenes, peaceful gods, olive groves, still water. A kitchen's quiet song. In the culina, or kitchen, bread bakes. You smell herbs, thyme, rosemary, crushed bay leaf. You hear the click of earthenware lids, the scrape of wooden spoons against stone pots. Servants move with practiced ease, not hurried, not shouted at. Even here, warmth reigns. Food is not just survival, it is a gift, a reason to gather. Bathing without rush. Many Romans visited public baths, but some homes had their own. Small tiled rooms with basins carved from marble. Warm water drawn from underground. Steam rising, muscles unwinding. They did not rush bathing. It was not a task, but a ritual. A chance to wash away not just dust, but worry. The library that waits. In some homes, tucked behind the garden, was a library. Shelves of scrolls, carefully rolled, tied, and labeled. Histories, poems, philosophy. A single couch rests by a window. The light falls like honey across the floor. Here, a Roman could read, or simply sit and let silence explain the world. A mirror of grace. Roman homes did not flash with gold. They glowed with grace. A bronze mirror beside a comb, a folded cloak on a cedar chair, sandals placed neatly by the door, a clay cup, half full, waiting to be finished tomorrow. These were the treasures, not coins, but comfort. When the lamps are lit as dusk falls, servants light oil lamps. The flames do not fight the darkness, they soften it. Shadows stretch across mosaic floors. Curtains sway gently in the night air. A flute plays, somewhere near or far. The household slows. Whispers replace speech. Even the birds fall still, and the home, this breathing thing, exhales into sleep. Sleep within these walls, now lie back. You are inside a Roman home, not a palace, but a place of peace. The walls are warm, the beds are low and welcoming. The air smells of lavender and stone. Tonight, no history must be remembered. Only this, that Rome knew how to rest. Let that truth cradle you now. Then let us walk into the heart of Rome, not the heart of stone, but of spirit, where voices gathered like birds at dawn, where ideas rose like incense in the morning sun. This was the Forum, not a battlefield, not a palace, but something older than both, a place where people listened. The soft power of the Roman Forum, words, wisdom, and the marketplace of thought. A slow walk through the center of Rome's calm intelligence, morning in the Forum. As the sun rose behind the Capitoline hill, the Forum Romanum stirred. It did not awaken in haste. It yawned in marble. It stretched through whispers. A few merchants arrived early, setting out olive oil jars beside purple cloth folded like slow waves. Pigeons fluttered from pillar to pillar. The cobblestones warmed under bare feet, and Rome began its day by gathering. A place for speech, not shouting in the Forum. You could hear ideas, not just orders. Senators in togas strolled past farmers with sandals. Philosophers argued under fig trees. Children listened wide-eyed to a teacher explaining constellations with a stick. And at the rostra, a speaker's platform shaped like a ship's prow, orators shared their words, not to dominate, but to persuade, to calm, to consider. The voice of the people. Sometimes the Forum was loud, but never violent. Here the Republic breathed. The Comitia Centuriata assembled. Citizens voted. Laws were proposed. Magistrates were chosen. But even when crowds gathered, Rome never shouted like a tyrant. It hummed like wind in columns, like sandals crossing stone, like water in a fountain nearby. Markets of meaning vendors called softly. Nothing flashy, just the promise of a fair weight and a fresh harvest. Dried dates from Africa, lemons from the coast, fresh loaves from Trastevere, a carved flute for a boy's name day. Every item had a story, and every story was welcome here. The Forum was not only for politics, it was for people. Philosophers in the shade. Near the edge of the Forum, beneath the temple of Castor and Pollux, a group sat on stone benches. Old men, young women, travelers, scribes, listening to a soft voice speak of virtue, of duty, of peace in the heart. Sometimes they debated, but never to win, only to understand. Temples that watched silently. The Forum was ringed by temples. Temple of Vesta, with its eternal flame, Temple of Saturn, keeper of the treasury Temple of Concord, where enemies made peace. Each structure stood in stillness, reminding all who passed. Rome's greatness was not its sword, but its stillness in thought. Time-worn, smooth, the Forum changed over centuries. Stones replaced dirt, statues were added, columns grew taller, but the soul of the Forum never changed. It remained a place of meeting, where one could pause and find the center of Rome, not in noise, but in balance. The Forum at dusk. As the day ended, the shadows grew long. Vendors packed their goods slowly. Debates softened to shared laughter. A mother carried her child, now asleep, past the arch of Septimius Severus. The pigeons returned to their ledges, the sky blushed pink and gold, and the forum exhaled. Another day of listening, done well. Sleep beneath the arches, now rest. You are sitting on a warm step. A breeze flows through columns. You hold no scroll, no coin, no need. You are simply there, as thousands once were, in the gentle center of something wise. Let your thoughts quiet. Let your breathing slow. You are in the forum now, and Rome is at peace. Then let us follow the sound of water, not crashing like waves, but whispering like time itself. Rome understood thirst, not only of the body, but of the soul. It answered with aqueducts, with fountains, with gentle streams that touched every life. Quietly, the gentle thirst, Roman aqueducts, fountains, and the flow of life. A calm journey through Rome's gift of water and the poetry of infrastructure. A city that listened to water before power, before politics. Rome needed water to cook, to bathe, to bless. And so, like everything Rome touched, it did not rush. It listened. It found springs in distant hills, watched how rivers curved, measured slopes with patient eyes. And then it built, not chaos, but grace. Building the unseen. Aqueducts were not loud. They did not roar. They did not boast. They slipped silently across the countryside, arches of stone gliding like birds in flight. Some stretched for over 50 miles. Some tunneled through mountains. All followed the quiet slope of gravity. Water did not need to be commanded. It only needed guidance, and the Romans gave it, gently. The water arrives. When the water reached the city, it did not flood in. It entered slowly, into cisterns, into tanks, into lead and terracotta pipes woven beneath streets like careful roots. From there, it fed. Public fountains, baths large and small, private homes, temples, laundries, and gardens. No one was left untouched. Water was public. It was shared. The murmur of fountains. In nearly every square, a fountain whispered. Some simple, just a lion's head and a basin. Some grand, adorned with gods and dolphins. But all of them flowed without hurry. A child cupped her hands. A merchant cooled his face. An old woman filled her jug. They came not for spectacle, but for stillness. Baths as blessing. The water also filled the baths. Rome's temples of warmth, the frigidarium, cold and clear, the tepidarium, warm, inviting, the caldarium, hot, fragrant with oil, men and women soaked, not to cleanse only, but to think, to talk, to pause. In the steam, differences dissolved. The senator and the mason sat side by side, wrapped in vapor and peace. Gardens that bloomed. Rome's gardens were not dry. Water flowed gently among the roots. It fed grapevines, rose bushes, citrus trees. In shaded corners of courtyards, a trickling stream might wind past statues of Pan or Venus. Not loud, not central, but always present, like breath. Water as a right, Rome did not gate its water. Even the poor drank from fountains. Even stray dogs found a corner to lap from. And in doing so, Rome taught the world. Civilization is not marble. It is the sound of water offered freely. Aqueducts in moonlight. Imagine now an aqueduct at dusk. Its arches stretch into the horizon. Birds roost along its edge. A shepherd rests beneath, listening to the hush of moving water high above his head. Nothing to see, but always something flowing. Sleep with the water. Now close your eyes. You are sitting beside a fountain. The stone is cool. The water falls, soft, regular, ancient. You feel your breath match its rhythm. In, like water arriving. Out, like water continuing on. Rome has many treasures, but tonight it offers you its gentlest gift, a drink from its eternal spring. Sleep now, and let it carry you. Then let us enter the quiet rooms where beauty was born, not shouted from rooftops, but whispered in stone, in pigment, in a pluck of a string. Rome was not only soldiers and senators, it was also artists who shaped peace into pattern and silence into song. The gentle arts, mosaics, music, and the paintings of peace, a soft stroll through Rome's creative soul, beauty beneath the feet. Step into a Roman villa and look not up, but down. There, on the floor, a mosaic waits. Tiny pieces of colored stone, red, gold, ivory, obsidian, placed one by one to form birds in flight, fountains with leaping fish, scenes of myths told in quiet grace. They do not move, they do not speak, and yet they live, because someone, with patience and purpose, placed each piece with care. Music in the courtyard. In the soft evenings, when the sky was violet and the air smelled of orange blossoms, Romans played music. Not in crowded halls, but in courtyards, under fig trees, beside fountains. Instruments whispered, not roared. The lyre, its strings plucked like heartbeats. The pan flute, soft and breathy. The cithara, echoing across tiled roofs. The tibia, a reed instrument, like the wind through reeds. Music was not for performance, it was for presence. Walls that sang. Roman homes were not bare. Their walls were painted with frescoes. Murals created while the plaster was still wet, so the colors sank deep and stayed forever. The scenes were simple. A bowl of figs, a couple in embrace, a heron in mid-flight, a path leading nowhere in particular. No kings, no battles, just life, painted as softly as it was lived. Fabric that floated. Roman clothing, too, had its grace. Light tunics, dyed in plant-based hues, flowing stolas, worn by women in shades of clay, honey, seafoam togas, folded like clouds, worn slowly, never rushed. Textiles were woven by hand, threaded with family symbols, stitched with meaning, not fashion. And when they moved like water in spring. Statues that breathed, even Roman statues carved in marble, did not roar. They stood in gardens, in libraries, in the corners of baths. Their eyes were calm, their gestures small. A finger to the lips, a robe brushing a knee. Some smiled, many simply stood, but all seemed to wait for your gaze, for your peace. Poetry in the shadows, and in shadowed rooms, Romans wrote, short lines, gentle verses, of seasons, of aging, of olive groves, of missing someone far away. I left a cup where you once sat. The night is cold without your story. Even the wind remembers your voice. These weren't for crowds, they were for memory, art for the sake of stillness. Roman art wasn't meant to impress, it was meant to soothe. It lived in the quiet. A painted bird above a doorway, a melody hummed while kneading bread, a pattern sewn into the hem of a child's robe. This was how Rome decorated time. Sleep in the gallery of quiet, now close your eyes. Imagine you're lying in a Roman room beneath a painted ceiling. Music drifts in from the peristyle. The air is still. A mosaic cools beneath your toes. You are surrounded by gentle things, by symbols of a people who knew how to see the world. Let their art cover you now, like a warm painted blanket. Sleep in beauty. Then let us walk not in triumph, but in acceptance. For even the mightiest cities, the grandest forums, the strongest legions, learn in time to rest. Rome did not fall like a tower. It faded like a sunset, slowly, warmly, with grace. The soft fall, how an empire gently let go of the world, a peaceful ending to a story told in stone. The slowing pulse, Rome, in her youth, was full of fire, in her middle years full of rule. But with age came softness. The roads grew quiet, the forums less full, the statues collected dust, and birds made homes in their marble arms. But there was no panic, only pause, a recognition. Even greatness needs to breathe. Borders grown wide and thin, the empire had stretched far, too far, from misty Britain to golden Egypt, from Spain to Syria. But with distance came delay, and with delay, drift. Not rebellion, not anger, just soft forgetting. A legion not replaced, a governor who stayed too long, a port that silted slowly shut. Emperors who whispered gone were the days of roaring Caesars. Now came emperors who ruled by writing, by delegation, by hope. Some were kind, some were tired. Most simply tried to hold what could no longer be held. And when one was gone, another stepped in. No collapse, just continuity that grew ever fainter. Cities that fell asleep. As the years passed, some cities simply stopped waking up. Markets emptied, roads cracked, roofs gave way to ivy and birdsong. But even in this, there was no shame. These cities did not die. They slept, and time, kind as ever, tucked them in beneath earth and memory. A different kind of strength. As soldiers faded, monks appeared. They carried scrolls, not swords. They built libraries, not fortresses. And they reminded the world that Rome was not only power, it was thought, language, calm. Echoes in the dark. Even in what people once called dark ages, Rome remained. In aqueducts still flowing, in roads still followed, in words still spoken, Latin carried like a flame through shadow. And in every quiet law, every city that rose again, Rome was there, watching, whispering. The last light. There is no moment when Rome fell. No curtain dropped, no trumpet sounded, only a gate left open, a letter undelivered, a boy born who never learned Latin, a field plowed where a temple once stood. And in this there is beauty, for what ends softly is often remembered longest. Sleep beneath the empire. Now close your eyes. You are standing on a Roman hilltop. The stones are warm beneath your feet. The breeze carries the scent of thyme and ash. In the distance, the sun dips behind broken columns. A city exhales. It is not mourning, it is resting. And you, child of stories, wanderer of ruins, you are welcome here. Sleep now. Rome is not gone. It is simply asleep.